Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast is Really Live. We are really live here on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, broadcasting everywhere. And obviously, if you're listening on the podcast a couple days later, we appreciate you too. Thank you for being here and being a constant listener. We appreciate that. We have a great show tonight. This is our second annual collaboration with Promptly Written Podcast, our good friends over there. And that means it's a story filled episode. And when we've got lots of cool stories coming up from myself and Utah, who is in the dark, apparently. And Aaliyah did Utah's
Hi.
camera. What happened to his camera while I had him in the
I
green
d-
room there?
I
He is
don't know.
gone. He's gone.
Wow.
He did not have a story ready, and so he's out. No, there he is. He's back. Was that your
That's my
internet?
story, and I'm sticking to it.
I am waving.
All right.
Hi.
So there's Utah and Aaliyah. Welcome to the show. And Utah's
Greetings,
little friend.
programs. My
What is
Wampa.
this?
It's my little Wampa. Oh, that's right, Aaliyah. You haven't seen Empire Strikes Back yet.
She has not, but we're working on
Oh.
that.
This is just a this is just a Star Wars creature, and a spoiler with no context.
Oh yeah, there you go. Wampa lost his arm.
Does
All
it
right.
grow back with the flower arm?
It's patting itself on the head.
Okay,
So
well,
tell us where you got the Wampa. For those of you listening at home, that was a Wampa stuffed animal whose arm detaches. It's pretty cool. Who makes that?
this is a Build-A-Bear special.
Oh, that's the Build-A-Bear one.
Ooh,
Yeah, so
Very
if you
cool.
go to Build,
Build-A-Bear has been really
neat.
if you go to Build-A-Bear.
the
Doing
IPs
a lot
that
of
they have
licensed
gotten a hold
IPs.
of. They got Doctor Who
Yeah.
that made
Impressed.
me like. I was thinking about getting a David Tennant bear.
See,
Doctor Who.
I got a Dalek and a K9 from Build-A-Bear.
Did you?
Yeah,
I just saw
they're
another
really
one
sweet.
too that I was kind of surprised at. But yeah, they have some pretty cool IPs. So I know you guys have been working really hard for a month on your stories,
A whole month,
and not just starting,
whole
an hour
month.
before the show started. But
Not at all. I'm not
The
typing
whole entire
right
month.
as we
I've
speak.
been
Not typing
to
at
bring
all.
everybody, to bring our audience up to speed, what happens is our good friends at Promptly Written they write short stories every month based on prompts given in by their listeners. And this month the prompt was World Gone Geek, so we were a part of that. We listened to their stories on their podcast, so you're gonna check that out. We'll give you all the details here in a little bit. And tonight
the
we're gonna do
deets.
our stories. Yeah. Some exciting stuff going on in the world right now, though, of pop culture. The Oscars are next Sunday. I can't believe that it's already next Sunday. We have
Crazy.
tickets to see Aladdin at Playhouse Square, which will be the
Oh,
first
nice.
time in probably a few decades that I will miss the Oscars. So that
That's
might
fine.
we
Well,
typically
worth
will
it,
have an
though.
Oscar. Yes. My mom will be in town, so we're taking her to see it. And
Oh, sweet.
yeah, we usually do a pre-show, but I guess we won't this time. So I guess we'll do a post-show
We'll do a
the
post
week
show.
after. We'll talk about
Yeah.
all the things. We'll find out if anybody gets slapped this year, that kind of fun stuff. Yeah. So, and it's Jimmy
Is
Kimmel.
Will
So I
Smith-
hope he does. No, I'm kidding.
Is
Just playing,
is Will
just playing.
Smith showing? Will Smith isn't even showing up, so nobody's getting
He
slapped.
can't show up, but somebody's
Right,
got to want to slap Jimmy
Yeah,
Kimmel, right?
hasn't he
Come
like
on.
been banned or something?
He's
He
been
did,
banned
like,
for 10 years.
Yeah, he can't come to Oscar events.
Look,
Kinda
I'm just
crazy.
going to say that I can't wait to say that Everything Everywhere All at Once got the most Oscars.
Yeah, I think
I would love to see it.
I think the trends are definitely headed that way. If you look at all the other award shows so far, it is going to win a lot of stuff.
It's going to win. It's going to win something. It's going to win at least
yeah.
one.
Oh, I think it'll be more than that. But yeah, kind of crazy. And it's the first year that a Marvel film is nominated for something other than effects or sound or whatever.
That's
Angela
right.
Bassett, congratulations, an acting award nomination for a
Yes.
Marvel film.
S-
She's not
supporting
going to
actress.
win. I'm just going to say it right now, and that's not because she's not amazing. I just don't think they're going to give it to her. And there's some incredible talent
There's
in
some
that
amazing
whole group right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know which way it's going to go, but I'm betting they're not going to lean towards the Marvel movie. That's just me, but
I agree. I think I'm leaning towards somebody from Everything Everywhere All at
yeah,
Once.
I know, and I think that I would like to see. I think that she would be my pick as well. So we'll see. All right.
I actually didn't watch the movie.
You
Sorry,
didn't
You
see
need
that
to
one
watch.
yet?
Oh my God, Leah, you need to watch it. You need to
You know
watch
what?
it.
I'm going to tell you one more thing before we move on about the Oscars. This is the first year since they've started doing eight
Yes.
nominees.
Yeah.
Or 10. 10?
10.
8?
10. I
10.
think it's 10.
Multiple,
Which is
more
too
than
much.
5, let's just say.
which is too many in my opinion, but go on.
That I have actually seen all but 2
Oh yeah, that's
of
right.
them because of streaming services now. It's kind of amazing. So I've seen everything except Triangle of Sadness and Women Talking. And Triangle of Sadness literally dropped on Hulu this week. So I will be watching
just
that.
in time.
So I will, and then I just need to find Women Talking, and I could probably find that anywhere. I mean, I
Well, we have one here.
Oh, wow.
Well,
But
yes,
you know what's so interesting
we
is
need
like,
more
I don't
than
have
one.
an
Like she
excuse.
needs to talk to another woman.
Correct.
And then
It has to be plural. We need
another
Yeah,
woman on the
you're right.
show. We're taking auditions. If anybody would, no, I'm just kidding. So Elliot has someone to talk to besides that.
I have women. No, I appreciate being the only woman because if I don't watch something, then it's okay because it's just me. But if the other woman that was here watched it, then I wouldn't have.
Well,
it
but
wouldn't be
it's still
justified
just
anymore.
no. But then it's still just you.
I don't want that. I'm okay with how it is right now.
It's okay if it's just you and you're the only woman. But as soon as another
Correct.
woman's here, then it's you, not her.
Correct.
She doesn't want to be the odd man out, the odd woman.
I don't.
Out,
I'm already the odd man
I see.
out right now, and it's okay. I don't
works
know why it's okay.
in a trio. It doesn't work when there's 4 people, I guess. Yeah.
When
It
there's 4
doesn't. It
people.
just
I see.
four is a
Gotcha,
crowd
gotcha.
at that point.
I guess so.
Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you're interested, if you're one of those
Just
people who would like to see some of these movies before, like, then figure out why they're there. We live in an age now where that's perfectly possible. Most of the time in the past, they were still in the theaters right up to the last minute, and some of them came back out for that purpose. But yeah, it's really kind of neat. And Women Talking may be somewhere, and if you know where it is, send me a message on Twitter or Instagram, whatever, so I can go and watch it. I'll find it. I have almost all of the streaming channels, so I'm sure if it's out there, I'll find it somewhere.
Hey, when I picked up my dinner at Tommy's, I saw some women there. There were some women talking.
Were they
at Tommy's.
talking?
You were talking. Yeah.
What were they talking about?
I don't know. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was more focused on picking up.
This movie allows us to figure that out, what they're talking about. So
oh my gosh, this
I
movie's
assume.
What
would be hilarious
break
is
open
if there were absolutely 0 women in the movie and it was just men talking, and people would be like, "This movie has the worst title
That's
I've
right.
ever heard of."
It's a movie
Or
about
is it
men
the
talking
best
about
title?
women talking.
They drew you in, and it's not even about men or women. It's literally a talking
my gosh,
dog movie.
Would that be
one of those pet movies where they're
It's a meerkat.
a Meerkat Joe.
It's Meerkat Joe.
Yeah, that's what it is. Talking.
Would that be
meerkat.
false advertising?
We don't. I mean, unless we're assuming Meerkat Joe's gender, I think we're okay.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyway, I don't know where that was going. But yeah, so very excited about the Oscars. Very disappointed not to be able to watch it live. But
You're going to see a magic carpet ride. That's cool.
Jeff, I'm gonna shout out my friend Winter, who is supporting us. Thank you, Winter.
Oh, is that who? Oh, look
Twitch.
at there. Hey, Aaliyah. Hey. She's saying, hey.
Heart.
Yeah, a purple heart,
Heart,
a black
heart,
heart,
heart.
a purple heart, a black heart. Very cool. Yeah, we're thanks for watching. That's awesome. We appreciate it. And there's another hey. We got more hey from Winter. We appreciate that. We're going to get to our stories and our guests here in just a moment, but I do want to take a second to talk about St. Baldrick's. I got a little QR code. Oh my gosh. On my screen, the live is covering it.
The live. Oh, come on.
I don't know if it is out there in the real world. I doubt it would be.
I'm guessing
they designed
no.
it to be there. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, St. Baldrick's, I got a QR code up there if you would like to scan that and donate. It is pediatric cancer research, for which I will be shaving my head on Friday, which will be very exciting. And
Friday.
It will be my 11th time braving the shave, if you will. And yeah,
the shade.
Is that why you've been growing your hair out?
I love
so
it.
yeah, that's why I am like I don't know if you've noticed, but I decided to go crazy and not wear my hat tonight so people could see how long it's getting. And the beard, of course, is out of control, as you can see. Grizzly Adams things going on here. But yeah, this is all this is going to go away. So I start letting it grow out around November, December. I don't know why it doesn't grow in the back. It's all up here on the top of my head.
It says there's no party.
Like, fluff up here.
There's no party in the back,
which is crazy. And we even talked about, I think, on Promptly Written that I sported a mullet back in the high school days, so I don't know why I can't grow it now. It was a pretty thin mullet. It wasn't a mullet to be proud of. I will say that. Like it was pretty weak. It wasn't a full mullet at the time, so maybe it's just not my thing to have hair back there. But anyway, maybe. It is what it is.
It's very interesting because I had another dream about a guy with a mullet.
Oh. Do we want to go there, or is that the end of the story?
Oh no!
Hey,
I don't know. I did. I had another dream about this guy with the mullet, and then there was this
guy with the mullet.
I had to fight. It was like a video game, though. It was like a video game. Wait, it was very interesting.
Okay.
Like you were in the video game with mullet guy?
Yeah, I was in.
Or you were playing.
Yeah, well, the video. Okay, so the mullet guy, I was supposed to be preparing.
Wait, is this your story? Are you is this the story you wrote?
Yeah, wait, hold on. Let me.
No.
Are we gonna
I need to type this. I need to type this because this sounds like a better story than what I have.
No, mullet guy was. I was supposed to be preparing all of his sandwiches for his wedding or baby shower, and the lady that was supposed to be helping me didn't know that.
What kind of video game is this?
I need to hold on. We're getting to the video game part. Video game part. Yeah. So I didn't know that I was supposed to be preparing his sandwiches, and neither did the lady that was in the kitchen. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, we are doing the wedding or event or whatever," and it was outdoors. I walk into this tent, and there's this like demon man guy with a purple sword. It's really long, and I'm trying to I have to get him off of this platform, and before he stabs me. And then I got him, but I jumped on this 20 plus point things, and that's how I killed him. That's how I killed him.
All right.
I got him.
That's an interesting Ubisoft is working on that video game right now. It's
20 plus point. This sounds like Diablo 4. It's really
maybe that could be. You might have, if this is the plot of Diablo 4, which has been secret for all.
Oh my gosh, I think you just killed a Skeleton King way quicker than Matt ever did.
Oh, that's bringing up some fighting words.
That's a deep cut.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's a deep cut. And people who have known us for a long time know what that means, but everyone else is not in on that joke, Utah. So that was not nice.
That's all right. Hey, she's talking about a 20-point plus.
We got the reaction from Matt that we wanted in the green room over there, so that was all good. Anyway, so St. Baldrick's, donate above any amount would be great. Again, it's all for pediatric cancer research. My daughter will once again be shaving my head Friday morning at 6 a.m. on Channel 5. Apparently, I'm going to be on the news again. They like to come very early. And I'm always there super early, and so they're like, we need somebody to shave early, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm going now. So it all depends if Rachel is going to get up that early and go. So I may, if she's not there, then I may wait. But
she may have other plans.
Yeah, who knows? No, I think she's planning to come, so we'll see. Anyway, St. Baldrick's, we'd love it for you to give if you can. I'm even wearing the shirt tonight, which is green, which is why I couldn't use the green screen tonight because obviously,
because then it would just be a floating head.
Yeah, or basically it was just like I could replace the green with all these different colors and things like that.
That's a cool shirt you got.
Look at this nice orange shirt I'm wearing now. How cool is that?
That's amazing. And then a color changing shirt.
I can even get World Gun Geek on there if I'm clever. If I stood up, you could see it.
Oh my god! Oh look, there it is.
It's too high up. All right. Anyway, that's enough of that. So it is. Definitely is.
All right.
So we're going to bring on our guests. These guys host a podcast called Promptly Written, where they, again, write stories based on people's prompts.
Why should you use air quotes?
Did I? I do that for everything. Here's my co-host, Utah, and Aaliyah is over there. No, I don't know. It's just a thing. because it's the name, and so I felt like
They
it should be in
write-
quotes, but I guess it would be italicized or capitalized. I don't know what the proper.
I just find it funny that they write as if they
That's
don't.
why I
really-
said it under right. No, I didn't.
You did.
I gotta play back the tape.
You did actually, and it's very delayed on my end. So all I see
so
is
funny. That's funny. No, I totally don't know where that came from.
As
they write.
They actually do write them, Jeff.
They sure do.
they're very good.
I bet so they write based on the prompts that people put in, and then they read them on the show and talk about the writing process, and it's a lot of fun. So we got together with them the other day. We recorded on their podcast, and now they are on ours. Please welcome Matt Shigerick and
Matt Shigerick.
Matt Shigerick.
Matt Shigerick is here to listen to the stories that you wrote.
Welcome, Ian.
Thank you.
No, we're
Glad to
really
be
glad to
here.
have
we
you.
Hello,
wrote.
guys.
Man, there was a whole lot packed into that first 16 minutes, man.
No idea what was going on, to be honest with you. But
Apparently, there was an inside joke that
something
I
was
know
going
nothing
on.
about.
Oh, yeah, you had to bring up
Right
the Skeleton King.
stories.
yeah,
No.
Matt's the long story short, Matt's terrible at video games. There we go.
So,
Okay, but that's great because now I have
Terrible
something to
at video
use
games.
as ammunition a little bit.
I thought we were going to have fun today, not just attack Matt
Well,
for
no,
stuff that
I
happened
feel,
like a decade ago.
I feel like that's
I
only
think it was
fair
a decade
because last time
ago. I
I
can't
think you're
believe
right. I think it has been about
I-
10 years.
this is only fair because last time it was attack Aaliyah. You came straight for the throat.
That's true. That's true. I'll give you that. Hey, before we go on, can I use the Demon Man guy with a purple sword in a story?
Right?
Yes, I give you all autonomy.
And
Take
don't forget
it.
the 20. Don't forget the 20-point plus thing, whatever that was.
It was like
Yeah.
20 plus experience or something like, but all I know is that
Oh, it's like
I
a
was able
bonus
to use it.
token
Yeah.
or something you have to
Okay.
grab.
I-
and-
Okay.
No, I had to jump on it. It was like this white
Yeah.
circle platform that I
Okay.
had to jump on.
Wow, it's like
And it
Scott
said 20
Pilgrim.
plus. I
There
don't
it
know,
is.
but I just know I had to jump on it to get the extra 20 points to
Okay. All
get
right.
the demon guy off
Big
the
purple
platform.
sword guy and mullet man. Mullet guy.
Please.
There's,
Sounds like you've got your story, Matt.
I got to move all these cameras around because it messes up my
Terrible.
equilibrium when people are looking in the wrong direction to be a part of this. So I had to move Matt down here to
I'm
the.
going to be useless for the next hour and a
Corner.
half. I'm sorry.
Well, don't be. Let's make use of you as soon as possible. Then tell us a little bit about Promptly Written.
I mean,
and
you did a
how you
real
guys got started.
Tell
you
us.
did a real good job of summing it up. So, like, every month, Ian and I sit down. Our listeners vote on or submit and vote on prompts, and then we have to write stories on the prompts. So, after we get the prompt, we write a story, and then and then we read them to each other, and it's kind of fun because my favorite part of it is just to see how different our stories are. Coming from the same 3 or 4 words. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the cool thing. Yeah, because they're usually, especially between the two of you, and just the different styles that you guys write in, the personalities. It's just they're usually 2 very unique stories from each other too. It's rare that they're like right down the same path at all, which is kind of interesting.
What's always fun is every so often you guys switch up
Flip-flop.
expectations.
Yeah,
Oh,
And then all of a sudden, like, oh, Matt, what a wholesome story that was. Ian, where
Right.
the heck
Yeah.
did that come from?
I think that was that was kind of the case this year, right? Or
this
year,
month, it sure
Yeah.
was. It's always my favorite when Ian starts off with, "I don't know where this came from," because then you know you're in for like a ride.
Yeah, buckle
You're
up.
I'm always
in for an
terrified when-
Aaliyah dream.
That story, you know. It's like, what's
My
the
dreams are a
commodity
lot
of
better
time?
than my stories. So
You
I don't know.
You should call on those.
Yeah,
You
your
should-
dreams
you-
are very like vivid. It seems. I can't tell you the last time I remember a dream that I had.
Same.
Aaliyah, I swear,
always
I
remember
them all the
them.
time. I
mullet
remember
guy
them.
better
Yeah.
be in your story.
Oh, he's not in my
In
story.
fact,
I
we
used
do
to
need a
read stories
photo
a
of
lot.
Mullet Jeff.
We need a what?
A photo of Mullet Jeff.
Oh, that's probably
Oh, you mean
one of my high school photos.
You mean mullet, Jeff?
No,
Yeah.
I mean the real.
It was.
This isn't
I mean,
like
it
how
was
we
only
write
about
stories.
collar
It's-
length. It was pretty. You know what I mean? Like I said, it was pretty wispy. For but
Oh, wispy. That's a nice.
kind of
Well, I
thing.
mean,
Yeah, no, I liked that word.
you were a
Good
youngster
word.
though, so it was like an adolescent mullet.
it was in high school, middle
It
school,
Teen
wasn't
high
mullet?
fully
school-ish.
formed.
Yeah.
Not an adolescent.
A teen mullet.
A teen mullet.
That's
that's
gonna
a
be your
story
prompt
title.
next.
Yep.
Right?
Writing that
Right?
down right now.
Yeah.
All
Teen
right.
mullet.
So one of the things that we have also done in the last time we collaborated was we read a book together. The book we read was The Pale Blue Eye by Louis Bayard or Louis Bayard. I don't know how to pronounce
Louis Biardi.
Yeah. I
Baloo.
thought it was really fascinating book. Takes place kind of like back in the 1800s. Edgar Allan Poe is a cadet at West Point, and this dude is Gus Landor is called in to
Is
investigate not just the hanging death of a cadet, because they assume at first that's suicide, but his heart has been carved out of his body, and thus a mystery unfolds as they try to uncover what's going on. And we all, I think, kind of enjoyed it. If you are out there and you're listening or watching and you want to read that book or see the movie, spoilers possible ahead. I mean, I think we can try to be I mean, if we spoil something, no big deal. I just want people to know that we might, but we can try not to, I guess. But on your show, we talked about the actual book, and now has everybody had a chance to see the movie now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I did.
I
Yeah.
definitely fast forwarded through a lot of it.
Yikes.
So-
You watched it at 1.5 times speed? Is that what you did?
Yeah, which you can do on Netflix.
I still did
Which
not know you
I-
could do this.
I-
Like, do you
I
have to be on a
tried-
computer to do it, or can you do it with like on the TV app?
Well,
That's a good question. I don't know.
That's a good
I know you
question.
can do
I
it
know
on
you
the browser.
on the computer, on the computer for sure. And I did try watching a little bit at 1.5 times speed, and I'll tell you what, I don't know why it made me laugh, but watching Christian Bale act at 1.5 times speed made me laugh.
That's great. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I thought it would be fun to watch it with the audio description on. Then it would be like we're just listening to the audiobook again. And just kind of like,
funny.
yeah, not even pay attention to what's happening on the screen.
I normally watch or have the subtitles.
Well,
right?
typically typically people will say that the book is better than the movie a lot. That's kind of like the cliche, is the book is better. I don't believe that's always the case, because I have seen some times where they decided to go into
different
another
way.
format, whether it's TV or movie, and they went in kind of a, loosely based and went in a different direction. It was amazing. Dexter being a perfect example of that. The books are good on their
It's a
own,
good one. Yeah.
but the show was had so much more depth and stuff going on it than the books did. But what do you guys think about this? So the book was better. The movie was better. I think I already know what some of you guys think, because we shared a little bit.
The book was better
The book was,
than
the
the
book was
movie.
better for sure. I think I would say, had I seen the movie first, I would not have been interested in reading the book at all.
I agree with that. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a fair statement. I think, yeah. I mean, so I actually had high hopes when the movie started. Like, I thought it started out really well and it had a really good tone, and I was really surprised to see some of the imagery that they showed, because I wasn't expecting him to go there. Like, I wasn't expecting an overhead shot of a corpse.
Mhm.
But it just kind of lost me. It just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah,
It had fidelity to the book very, very much, and like for having done so, it was. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
yeah. There were definitely lines and scenes and beats that were ripped right out of the book. But as a whole, I felt like the movie was disjointed. Like, there were times where,
Yes.
like, Landor's in the tavern, and all of a sudden he's at dinner with the family. I'm like,
Right. Well,
Why?
and
How
they,
did we get here?
they simplified his character a little bit, which I think was a smart move for the sake of
Sure.
the film.
yeah, that makes sense.
Like, we didn't get a lot of his backstory, but I think overall casting was a big problem
Yes.
in this movie.
Yes.
I saw, when I was reading the book, Colonel Thayer and Captain Hitchcock. I felt like they were like very like assuming.
They were younger.
Like, they were just like, they were younger, and I felt like they were like almost larger than life. They were like people you didn't want to mess with. And for Thayer, I couldn't stop picturing Peter Pettigrew the whole time. Like I was like, this guy's just a
Sure,
rat. You know what I mean? Like, and he wasn't
that.
he wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't threatening at all. He looked like
Yeah.
I mean, like no offense to that guy, but it was like almost like a human cartoon character.
Yeah, I kept on thinking of the bishop from Monty Python.
No,
Oh no,
the Spanish Inquisition, not that one.
yeah, actually, yeah, I meant the bishop from Princess Bride.
Oh,
kept on-
Mowich.
Kept on imagining him. Right, I kept on just because just the way he was hunched over, and like you said, he
Yeah.
was just not a very intimidating character, which is what I pictured both Thayer and Hitchcock to be. Were kind of like very much strong military men, very much,
Right, and yeah, the military thing, they didn't feel military to me at all.
yeah.
I
They
don't
felt
know,
bureaucratic to me.
and it was periodic. It was like a period piece. So I mean, maybe that was what the military was like in 1830. But I would assume that they would have. I don't know. Like when you read the book, these cadets should be afraid of doing anything that's against the rules, and like I wouldn't be afraid to do anything with these guys in charge. Like,
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I can see
Right.
that. I think I saw some of you guys were saying it was kind of meh and things like that, and that all came before I had a chance to see it. So I went into it with that like mindset, thinking, okay, well, some folks aren't enthused about this, and the more I watched it, I wondered, and this is the conundrum with every book that's ever been made into a movie or vice versa, is I wonder if we would have seen the movie completely differently if we hadn't read the book. Like some of the
think so.
things,
A fair point.
some of the things that we loved about the book that weren't in there, that's why it was meh. You know what I mean? Or
That's a-
because let's face it, it's written by a guy who can write, right? And then about a guy who can write, Edgar Allan Poe. And there's some really great like Poe sequences we talked about that are
Those callbacks and stuff.
really,
Yeah.
really written in this cool style. It was sort of the way I felt like you would never be able to make a proper movie or television show about the series of Unfortunate Events books. Because what was so great about, I don't know if any of you read those, but what's great about them is the language, the way it's written, like the wordplay and things like that. And if you don't have, in the movie, it's just like things happen. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're just narrating straight from the book, it's like some of these funny ways that he would say things in the book that made it so fun, they're gone. It's like watching Dr. Seuss, play out like a Law and Order show or something. You know what I mean? Like all
Which
the
I would
language
watch.
is gone, and it's a total different. Yeah.
Dum dum.
I would watch.
Would
that
you
too.
eat that with a car? Would you eat that in a bar?
Yeah.
Would you eat that on a
You
train?
see Ice-T interrogating the Sam I Am to find out.
now
it's
you
like-
see, I could have supported Ice-T in this film.
Yeah.
Like,
right?
yeah,
he would've been
for
great.
sure.
Yeah, totally.
But
Yeah.
when I look at the movie, I
He would've
think the
just
same
had
kind of thing.
one-liners.
It's like this movie doesn't feature some of the stuff that I really kind of dug about the book, which was that language that was used. You know what I mean? And that sucked me in. So it's automatically going to not have that because it's a film, unless it's a total, narration bill, and I don't want that either. So I don't know. I'm not saying it would be we would love it. I'm just saying like I think that may have also tainted our view a little bit.
Absolutely. No, I think you're
Yeah.
right. Even taking that into account, though, at least for me, I felt like it was jumping between scenes with really no kind of
Connective tissue.
connective tissue between. There were times where I'm like, oh, now we skipped over here and we don't have any
Yeah.
explanation or why. Like the one that sticks out in my mind is all of a sudden we're at dinner with the family and I'm like, we were just like in the woods talking with Landor and now we're having dinner with the family with Landor and Poe.
Yeah, and there
With
was no
exposition, explanation. or
no, there
anything
wasn't
about
even like a passing moment where they were like, "Hey, come over for dinner tonight."
No, there was nothing. It was just like,
Yeah,
boom.
because like the last conversation that they had was Landor saying, "I have a dinner I need to get to," and then that was it.
And you
And-
know
and-
that all
and-
that stuff is on the cutting room floor because I mean it's a 2-hour and 10-minute.
It's already
movie,
a 2-hour movie. Yeah.
Probably could have easily been like 2.5, and
It could have been
They were
3.
trying to
Yeah, I
avoid
think
a
it could
lot
be
of that
3.
stuff. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. That you hit it on the head. I'm positive that there is stuff on the cutting room floor that would have made this movie make more sense.
Yeah, I think pacing was a big issue. I think it started out kind of on the right track, but then
Yeah.
how you were talking about Poe and just like how he spoke, like that deserves to be slowed down. Like you should hear that.
Yeah.
You need time to process that. And every time he was talking, it was like I think his casting was good. But he was just like running through everything. You didn't even know like half the time. I don't know if you're
but I didn't
comprehending
like
it.
him in the role. I don't think his delivery was wrong, and I
It
didn't
was a
like,
little odd. I got used to it, but
I didn't like Bale in the role either. Like I like him as an actor normally, but I did not see him as Lander at all.
Yeah. Well, I disagree about Henry Melling. I liked him as Edgar Allan Poe. I liked his performance. The thing that threw me off though about it was it was just something I never thought about. Historically, it's accurate, but I just never thought about it. I always assume every
Him having an accent.
every poet ever has a snooty British accent, right? You just assume because they're hoity-toity but this guy's from the South, so he's not going to sound like that. And he's not Harvard educated or something, you know what I mean? And so when he started talking with a little bit of a drawl, at first I was like, who's this guy? What's happening? So that threw me off at first, but as the movie progressed, like I really started to enjoy him in the role. Again, I felt like, I mean, I kind of agree about as far as like how it did feel rushed, like a lot of his dialogue.
yeah, they just need to slow him down.
But I loved how he like portrayed the character. I thought it was kind of fun, and there's a little bit of humor here and there. It kind of had at his expense, which is good. But it's neat to see because he's Dudley from Harry Potter, and it was neat to see him in a completely different,
very different role. Yeah,
role. So that was kind of cool too. I think. But yeah, it was overall. I can't say I didn't enjoy it, but it was just it's not something that I would rush out to see again for sure.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think Ian pretty much summarized it well, and the fact that not having read the book, if I saw this movie, I don't think I would have been compelled to read the book, which is sad because the book is good.
The book was
really
great.
good.
My question is like, if you watched the movie without reading the book, would you even
understand?
Comprehend it?
Yeah.
That's the other question too. It felt, it felt disjointed enough.
I don't think.
You
I don't
knew
think
why
it was
they were
cohesive
dinner. You read
enough.
the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
The build up
I definitely
to the
don't think
reveal
that it
about the
wasn't.
family wasn't there. It just
No,
was.
no,
it
it
just
didn't
happened
happen at
at
all.
the end. It just like by
by
what's
the
going
way,
on.
yeah.
Yeah. I
did
I
find-
definitely feel like.
No, go ahead, Aaliyah. Go ahead, woman talking.
Go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. I was gonna say I do feel like the only reason I was able to skip ahead, like fast forward through a very large chunk of the movie, was because I read the book. And I would want to do the same thing even if I didn't read the book, because I don't think
Like it
Well,
wasn't moving very.
good.
And ironically, you probably fast forwarded through stuff that wasn't in the book anyway, or wasn't in the movie anyway, because the book was so much fuller in content, right?
Yeah, I just don't think that it was very cohesive at all. Like,
Yeah,
without the book as a foundation, it wouldn't.
I did find the one change very interesting, where they changed Professor Pawpaw into a French guy instead of a Native American, which I assume they did because they didn't want to piss off, any Native Americans
Probably.
with a kind of its time representation of a Native American.
Right.
But yeah, the fact that he was Professor Pepe and not Pawpaw I found kind of humorous.
I mean, that character, he was sort of his own, in his own little universe anyway. You know what I mean?
Right. That was So
What
that
about
was a
his
change
fingers?
that would
Y'all
work.
pay attention to that? His fingers, like his fingernails, they were so dirty. I just couldn't get over that fact.
Well, everybody's fingernails were dirty in the 1800s, Aaliyah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of par for the course, I think, for that time.
They were just so black. I feel like that was the only thing that I could focus on when he was talking. It was just how black his fingers were.
You don't remember the chapter of Gus Landor talking about how dirty everyone's nails were?
I think the other thing that was interesting is, and again, without spoiling anything, obviously there's a twist at the very end that obviously, if you've read the book, is coming. So I did kind of enjoy watching it from that perspective, trying to spot the things that might points to that, you know what I mean, that I missed obviously when I was reading the book, but now I have a chance to see it. Maybe I can pick those things out. And there were a few things that were really, I was like, because I was watching it with my wife and daughter, and I would see something and I'd be like, that, yeah, you don't know what that means, but I do. And I was like, that's kind of cool. You know, like there was, you know what I mean? So there's a couple little things. There's other movies that are like that where you know the twist at the end, you know, like Sixth Sense. Like if you watch that again, it's a whole different experience to be able to see how often he gave the whole story away, and you just didn't even notice because he was so well paced. But so that was kind of fun, I guess.
So your wife and daughter watched it with you?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they hadn't read the book. So what did they think?
No.
Were they like overall unimpressed?
No, that was okay. Yeah, they weren't like gushing over it, but they enjoyed it. It was like, okay, that was a neat mystery, you know.
I'm disappointed that the movie didn't have the scene that I was kind of looking forward to see how they did, which was the whole fighting with the saber in the closet.
In the closet. I was waiting for that too.
Like I was kind of looking forward to see how they did that, and they just totally skipped it.
That was a bit of a disappointing change because they just found him rummaging around, right?
They just
he literally just was like,
didn't even explain why he was doing it either. If I recall.
Except that once we know the twist, we can kind of guess why he was trying.
So speaking of the coat, like
stuff to pin, you know,
were military uniforms really that color in 1830? It seems ridiculous. They were like bright blue and yellow. Like, why would you wear something like that? That's not like.
Well, you have to remember. I mean, you know, it goes along. It goes along with the combat tactics of the time, right? I mean, who in their right mind now would line up in a straight line and then line up in a straight line and then shoot at each other and keep on doing that until there's nobody left. So I feel like
with the accuracy of weapons today,
right? Exactly. But I feel like, you know,
it'd be over in 4 seconds.
It could be just a cadet thing too. Maybe like, you know,
that's
hey,
true.
Your
very school thing,
clean and like, you know, presentation.
Well, yeah,
but even the captain.
Well, if you think about it, my dad was in the Marines and he had a very sharp blue. They didn't wear that
for dress uniforms, right?
Yeah,
like
he didn't wear it like when he was over in Vietnam. You know what I mean? It was a totally different.
Gosh, I hope not.
You know what he wore over
cleaning
there.
bills would be outrageous.
So I imagine that was the dress uniform of the officer or whatever he was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
Can't even imagine trying to keep patent leather shoes clean in the jungle.
Yeah, right.
I also wasn't expecting it. I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting it to be snowing, and I might have missed that in the book. I don't. I probably did.
It was October, November, December.
It was October.
The dates were in the book. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. The dates.
The opening shot did surprise me though, because I distinctly remember in the beginning of the book, I think Landor mentioned that they were having an Indian summer. And when the movie started with him, you know, in the snow, in the river, and all that kind of surprised me. But yeah, I mean, the dates are, you know, October, November, December of 1860. I think it ended in
December, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So,
well, the movie paces a lot quicker too. Like it all happens in a shorter amount of time, so they needed it to already be winter, I guess. Especially since they're using that ice house and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it would typically be used, you know, to keep stuff cold.
The ice house was a lot bigger than I envisioned.
Brutal scenes there with getting whacked in the head with the
wow, it was a little more graphic than I expected.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I appreciated it though.
Did you find some of the dialogue I felt was a little out of place? It sounded too modern with how I would imagine them speaking.
You can definitely
here and there.
Yeah, you could definitely tell what was like added or written by the screenwriter or adapted versus what they took right out of the book. I felt like there was a definite difference in vocabulary and cadence. But I don't know. I felt like Christian Bale was just playing Christian Bale.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was like. I felt he was his delivery was really inconsistent. Sometimes it felt like he was kind of getting into a character, and then other times I was like, maybe more Christian Bale.
It kind of makes me wonder about just like the Netflix production kind of thing, like because this was like it's almost like a straight to DVD movie, you know, from back in the day, kind of, right?
Not true. I guess for all intents and wasn't this released in theaters for like a week or two?
Yeah,
was it?
Was it?
That's the way the productions are done now. Like when you think about Netflix production, several
they're
have been
their own
nominated for
studio.
Oscars. You know what I mean?
Right.
The Scorsese one with the really bad deep fakes.
Oh, the de-aging.
Now, see, if you would have given this to Scorsese, we would have had a film on our hands.
That could be interesting. But
Maybe.
what was the one that he made with? Well, he made it with
With-
the same
with
guys
De
he always
Niro?
makes it.
With De Niro and Pesci, right?
Yeah,
the
I
de-aging
never
one.
watched
Which
it
movie
because it
did he
was
make
like-
with De Niro and Pesci?
It was like 14 hours long, right?
All of them.
Yeah, it was actually really good. The CGI on the deep fake de-aging was pretty bad, but it was a pretty good story. The Irishman, that was it. So that was nominated for Oscars. It was pretty excellent. But yeah, way too long. Yeah, Netflix.
A Scorsese film.
I mean, they're making good quality movies. I don't know if you've had a chance to see Glass Onion yet.
I have seen
The Knives Out.
That is great.
It's phenomenal. It's so good.
That's great.
And that's the same thing. Netflix, that was out in theaters for a little while, and then it's on Netflix right away. So that's kind of their formula, and it's working, I guess.
I am on the Benoit LeBlanc bandwagon.
Oh,
So,
same. I'll
was it
watch
better
any-
than Knives Out?
I wouldn't say it was better.
I only saw parts of it.
Yeah,
And the
I would
parts I
say-
saw, I would say Knives Out was better.
I wouldn't say it was better than Knives Out, but it was very close. It was
Okay.
very
'Cause I
close
love
to being
Knives
that
Out.
good. Because and Knives Out has the advantage of being the first one, right? Like everybody went in not expecting it, but now we're expecting something. So
It might be a better overall written and acted mystery, but Glass Onion is more rewatchable for me. Like I would watch Glass
I would
Onion
agree with
again in a heartbeat if you wanted to watch it.
Okay.
Even though I know how it's going to end. You know what I mean? Like I'm ready to watch. It was more entertaining. Like the characters were I thought were.
It had a lighter tone. It had a lighter tone to it
Exactly.
for sure.
Yeah, it was a little bit more entertaining. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's not the book that we read though. So I one more little pitch from that though. Ryan Johnson, who directed both of those, also put out a show on Peacock called Poker Face with the incredible Natasha Lyonne.
Natasha Lyonne.
And that is the best new show of
Poker Face is
2023.
pretty good.
It
I need
is
to watch it.
Some of the
phenomenal.
episodes are better than others, but yeah, it's entertaining.
Yes, but yeah, I am
It's a good
so
concept.
loving. I love her character. It's Columbo. If Natasha Lyonne was Columbo, basically, it's a mix.
which is
It's
fantastic.
So great, yeah, and that she
Yeah,
could
that's
like
on our list.
mysteriously, psychically,
Tell if you're
detect BS. Columbo could kind of do that too. You know what I mean? And that's why. And they're both
It's all in the
obnoxious and
cigar.
annoying to the people that they're investigating, which is just the best. Anyway, and I love Natasha Lyonne. She's so fun.
she's great.
Anyway, that's a total separate thing. So overall, I think we're saying obviously the book is better if you're into that. If you're not into either, the movie is just average enough that if you're want a mystery, it's all right.
It's okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's a
It's
waste
okay.
of
Nothing to
time.
write home
Well,
about.
yeah, I
no,
mean,
but I enjoyed
it's
it
on-
enough that I
Yeah, it's on Netflix. If you've got nothing else that you feel like watching, then go ahead and. Oh,
and it's a decent
just
mystery. I do like the twist. I mean, it
has a nice
interesting.
twist.
Yeah.
It does have a nice twist. I will say, as an aside, just yesterday I was looking at Netflix, and why is R.I.P.D. one of the top number one movie on Netflix?
The original or the new one they just
The
made?
original. They just made a new one that doesn't
Yeah.
have Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges.
No.
Then
It's
that's
like a
probably
prequel
why.
kind of thing.
Then that's probably why it's number one. Okay,
Okay.
that makes sense now. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
we were flipping through, and Karen's like, R.I.P.D. I'm like, why is
Yeah.
that number one this week?
I think it's a prequel, if I remember correctly. I like I don't remember who's in it besides Ryan Reynolds. Who's the cowboy? Jeff Bridges or somebody
Jeff
like
Bridges.
that?
Yeah.
Was it Jeff Bridges?
Yeah, it was Jeff
It's
Bridges.
I've never
it's
seen
him
this.
when he was a younger cowboy or something like that, or something.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's not.
all right. So that makes sense then. That would be why it was number one. Because I'm like, it's from like 20. It's like from a decade ago, literally.
The
And
original,
it was.
yeah.
And it was okay.
Well,
I mean,
a lot of stuff does trend on Netflix that way, though, right? It comes out, they finally get it on the streaming network, and all of a sudden, it's like
Poof,
has
number
renewed
one.
life.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen to a couple different movies. It's kind of interesting, but not that one.
but not R.I.P.D. I mean, it
No,
really.
I don't
mean,
think
it was an average.
Shrek had a big comeback for a while. I think like it was one of the top movies.
It was
when
rightfully so.
yeah, when it popped into streaming, like people just like binged the crap out of it and watched it a bunch.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway.
Makes sense.
All right. Well, so that concludes our little movie review. Unless you guys have any last thing that you want to throw out
this
about
is
it.
like
Concludes.
All right. Yeah, that concludes the movie review part. So I think we got to do these stories, right? Again, the prompt was just Matt. You just decided it was going to be. Or tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, normally we put the prompt out, but I just like sometimes like I just like brain fart kind of thing, and we'll be like getting ready to record and be like, oh my god, I didn't put a poll out, and it was so late. I was like, you know what? These guys try to throw us with a loop on the prompts all the time with your awfully suggestive themes
That's
that
you,
come
Sal.
through.
What?
But so I was like, you know what? We're just gonna make it
Wow.
a tribute to these guys, and we're just gonna call it World Gone Geek and see what they can do.
That's funny
Definitely feel
'cause-
like I got the bad end of that stick.
That's funny because wasn't last year kind of a mistake on the poll too for the prompt?
Yeah, we tend to make mistakes. I mean,
Oh
I could
yeah, that
probably
was the one where you.
It was option 1, and you messed
option
up.
one.
Oh, yeah.
Because you left the default option in there, and there was a couple
Yeah,
others, but the
that
default
was my
option
bad.
one.
That was
It's
kind of
kinda-
funny though.
I think that needs
was
to be a
funny.
trend. I think we need to have some sort of
It needs to be a
screw up
mishap
every year now,
yeah,
or it's not.
I think so.
Because it wouldn't be World Gun Geek if there weren't some
Even
sort of
technical
technical.
difficulties. Yeah.
Right.
So, anyway, but I don't know who wants to go first. I mean, if you know, yeah, who wants?
I
to
can go first because mine's probably the shortest one,
All right.
and then that way I can get it out of the way and.
All right.
And I don't know who's next after that. I was going to
Then
say
I will-
somebody could.
I will go next. I feel like we
Why
should
do
end
I
with
have to go
Jeff
last?
because
I went last time.
yours is so probably very good, and I feel like I
I
should.
don't know about. Well, I have a lot of like preface that I need to talk about before I read mine.
Oh.
So
Wait, what?
Yeah, mine does not. All I need to say is
we need to.
Does-
Yeah, I just want to explain kind of where it came from. kind
Is
of thing.
that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Is that like part of your word count or no?
No, it does not count. All right. Well, then you
All right.
tell you. I guess yeah. You'll go first. I will
Let
make
me set up my reading.
I will
reading
centralize
apparatus
you.
here.
I will. I think I'll actually just take everybody offline, so we're just listening, and we don't get any background noise by accident. So, oops! Now it's on me. I turned you off instead of me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, all right. Okay. This is a short story. It's about 1,450 words. As I mentioned before, probably before we went live, I found that if I kept on going, then I would just keep on going, and it wouldn't be ready for presentation. So I decided to err on the side of conciseness. And so here we go. The title of my story is Kick Davitt. I am a huge fan of Kick Davitt, the most prolific interviewer of a generation. He ended up interviewing over 5,000 guests in the 20-year run of his original show. He had a knack for getting guests that didn't normally do in-depth interviews. There was a certain trust that he instilled in his guests, which usually resulted in some incredible interviews. From heads of state, introverted celebrities, to pioneers in their fields, Kick Davitt has talked to them. His last interview was 30 years ago with a man named Timmy Jingle, who's probably long dead by now. Was he a comedian? Maybe a reporter. I honestly don't remember. What I do remember is wondering why he was the final guest of the critically acclaimed Kick Davitt show. Maybe Mr. Davitt didn't know it would be the last show, so he didn't think about booking a really memorable guest. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Timmy Jingle wasn't a worthy guest. I mean, he was deemed worthy of an interview by the great Kick Davitt. In any case, I don't know why Mr. Davitt decided to come out of retirement, but I couldn't pass up seeing his interview show in person. I don't even care who the guests are. I just want to experience the master interviewer in action. The venue was an old-fashioned small theater. I say old-fashioned because it wasn't like your typical contemporary theater where you're scanned as you walk through the door and you find yourself already in the theater and you just go directly to your seat. This theater had an actual lobby and ticket takers, even if they were synthetics. Their rubbery skin revealed their vintage as older models a generation or two back. Back then, they were allegedly designed to purposely not look human to ease the fears of those who didn't trust synths. That's what we called them back then. There was a large contingent of society that just couldn't bring itself to trust these new contraptions. Even though synths could do all the jobs that humans didn't want to do and without complaining, it took a lot of convincing. So many tests, so many studies, so many ads, all trying to sell the same thing ad infinitum. Synths are safe. You'd think that a generation brought up on Disney's audio animatronic figures would be more accepting, but I guess the difference was that unlike those Disney figures, synths could roam freely and interact, unscripted, among us. Ultimately, it didn't take long for a generation of kids who grew up in a world with synths to take their existence for granted. And many of those kids became the very people that would advance synth tech into what it is today. Other than their eyes, synths now look and act quite human. The eyes were the only concession to ease any fears that synths could blend in with the rest of us. The eyes were required to not look human. The method was left up to the manufacturer, of which there were really only the big three: Tsuyu Corp, Honda, and Kinseo Tech. They're all basically the same, but Kinseo Tech has a certain cachet. An American company, a diverse leadership team, and somehow their synths were considered the closest to being almost human. I found my seat and sat down, ready for an insightful and enlightening interview. None of us knew what to expect since the topic and guests weren't revealed yet, but the house lights went out, so we were about to find out. Good evening, everyone. In case you've forgotten, I'm Kick Davitt, and welcome to my show. Uproarious applause lasted for a few minutes. It seems I wasn't the only one excited to see Mr. Davitt come out of retirement. Thank you. Tonight is hopefully the first of many to come, as I found myself bored with retirement, and I became aware of some interesting developments that I wanted to explore. So why not bring all of you along with me? Are you ready? More uproarious applause. This felt more like a concert. Tonight, I have two people at the top of their respective games, and we're going to delve into an age-old topic. What is sentience? Let's meet our guests. A preeminent expert in philosophy and the relationship of thoughts, ideas, and the real world, he studied not only the human condition, but the human psyche as well. Please welcome Professor of Philosophy and Thought at Cambridge University, Dr. Fef Jord. And the woman who not only invented tech to improve synths by leaps and bounds, but is also one of the loudest advocates for synth acceptance in society. Chief Engineering Officer of Kinseo Tech, Dr. Salia Atafan. Thank you both for being here, and welcome. A pleasure to be here. Or is it? Dr. Jord joked. Thank you for the invite, said a much more serious Dr. Atafan. So, let's get right to it. What is sentience? How do we judge what beings have it, and what do we do with them? Dr. Jord jumped at the chance to speak. Well, the widely accepted definition of sentience is having the capacity to experience feelings, emotions, some would even say sensations. But how does one prove any of that? How does one create a test that truly shows those capacities? And is this hypothetical test universal? Would it work on both natural and synthetic beings? And what do we do if or when a subject passes the test? How does that change our behavior and thoughts towards the subject? What legal ramifications would there be? What moral ramifications would there be? Is just being sentient enough? Do we take a step further and consider not just sentience, but consciousness? Where are the goalposts, and would we continually move them? Should we frame these questions to focus strictly on synths in particular? What would happen if synths became conscious? Would that be a result of them learning to be conscious? Or would they be programmed with it from the get-go? Can you imagine if either were the case? the world as we know it would go poof. Dr. Jord did a hand dance while saying that, reminding me of Doug Henning doing close-up magic on one of those television specials that we were all watching and were all the rage back then. It's magic, he'd always say. Or at least, that's how I remembered it. Our world's gone. Geek. Dr. Adafin just looked at him and uttered that one single word. I chuckled at the declaration, and laughter started to ripple through the audience. But as I slowly stopped, the laughter around me became louder and more spirited, until it started to sound more like cackling. People's mouths started eerily moving out of sync with the sound. What in the hell is happening, I thought to myself, looking around nervously. Before I finished that thought, I started hearing a ripping sound, but with a moist squelch to it. It was then I noticed that everyone in the audience was turning their head to face me, like old ventriloquist dummies, and the sound of tearing flesh was from those that had to turn their head an unnatural amount that may be normal for owls, but not for human beings. As the cackling continued, I could see the flesh on some of these people slowly sliding off their skulls, revealing something that was definitely not human bone underneath. They were synthetic. But how? And why? I was frozen in a panic, knowing I had to get out of there, but made immobile by the sheer shock of what I was witnessing. A quick glance to the stage made me even more confused, as each person was in their own different states. Dr. Jord looked like a deer in headlights, not moving an inch, even as cackling audience members waved their way to the stage. Dr. Adafan was calmly sitting in her chair, taking it all in with a wry smile on her face. And Mr. Davitt, well, it seems he was in denial, as he carried on as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening. Doesn't he hear the cackling? Doesn't he see the heads turning? Over the cacophony, I could hear Mr. Davitt say, "Please tune in next week when my guests will be Sat McGarrick and Liam Ewis, who will discuss the importance of the pen and watch in human history." Hearing that somehow finally broke me free from my frozen state of frightened disbelief, and I started to quickly stagger to the exit. The sound of footsteps behind me. And scene.
Bravo, Sat McGarrick, and what did you say, Liam Ewis?
Liam Ewis. The only thing
great.
that I will say is that I loved all those reverse names, but it was a missed opportunity for Hug Denning.
That's true. This is very true.
Yeah.
Yes.
But,
I will revive. That's
Davitt got me at the beginning. It took me. It's funny because you said it several times at the beginning, which in like good ways. Like it was like I liked the repeating of the name, the way you like kind of laid that out. But it took several of those for me to finally get, what is he saying? Kick Davitt. I don't know that name. And then it finally hit me. Dick Cavett is one of the premier interviewers of our time. So
indeed.
Yeah, but it took me, I'm like, that's an interesting choice for a name. Like, why did he do that? And then it finally hit me. And then when you got to Fef Jord, I was a little bit.
It took me until you said it. So
yeah.
There you go.
But I will say this. So I wrote this down when you were that when he asks the question, that Dr. Jord jumped at the chance to talk, and I'm wondering if is that art imitating life? Was that a comment on how I'm always like one of the first ones to try to
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's art. I'm not saying that's art imitating life, but perhaps I was inspired by.
What was mine? Because I was like, wow, that sounds like. I was like, wow, that sounds really very similar to my name.
It's too funny.
That's great.
Celia Atafan.
What always gets me with Utah, especially, is like the performance, like the level of the performance.
It's fun.
It's like
profound.
A true thespian. Like, and
I can't help it.
No, it was fantastic, and I always love, like, I always look forward to see how people are going to use the prompt. And when you said
very well
"world
Oh, that was
gone," and
very
then all
well
of a
done.
sudden there's like a little
Geek. At first, I thought your story was done. Like I literally hesitated. Like, was he like teasing us by ending it without finishing? It's kind of like Avengers, and then the credits roll
And then they
instead of
cut. Yeah,
us
right,
saying
right.
assemble. I thought that's what you were doing, and then when you said geek, I lost it. I was like,
Yeah,
no,
it was too
that's
funny.
awesome. I love it.
It's so good.
So
That's
there,
an
so there
interesting.
we go.
Carrying on the torch though of some of the common themes in the stories that I've been doing on our side the past couple
for
of months.
sure.
And I was happy to see that.
Yeah, and I think
A
I
little
found another prompt hidden away in your narrative there. I think I expect to
nice.
see moist squelch as
That-
showing
that's a
up in a
good
poll
visual.
one of these days.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
It was funny too because I'm just, I'm just. This is just flowing out, and I'm like, okay, there's a ripping, there's a tearing. There's got to be a more descriptive way of saying this to kind
It
of
says moist.
and as much as I hate the word moist, it was just kind of perfect for that specific spot.
I was just going to say, like 95% of the time that the word moist ends up on the page, it usually ends up getting removed for something else because I feel dirty every time I say it.
It's not
Yeah,
the most pleasant of choices for a word.
It's
No,
not.
no, but it somehow fit right there, and
Yeah.
so I
worked well.
kept it.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a part in my story where a moist squelch would have fit perfectly. Now that I'm
Nice.
I'm
See?
wondering if I
See?
can work that in.
There we go. And it's a new hashtag moist squelch.
It's probably a pretty good band name, too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's a very good band name.
Can you imagine?
dibs.
Just like,
Dibs.
ladies and gentlemen, moist squelch. Like,
Put your hands together
My
for
question is, what genre of music does this band play?
Yeah.
right?
it's I don't know. I've never described
Classical.
music as moist before, so I guess it's like some sort of new interpretation.
Kind of. They probably play something like damp
maybe it's like
rock.
ska.
I'm thinking they
like
opened for
ska
Swamp
rock
Rock
or
like that.
something.
Swamp rock.
like-
Isn't swamp rock a thing?
It might be.
Probably.
If not, it could be.
Well, moist squelch and
Squelch.
swamp rock.
Yeah, no, I like it.
So
I also originally thought that moist squelch might have been redundant, but then I thought about it more, and I'm like, no, you know what?
It works.
It kind of fits too well. I didn't want to mess with it. So.
No, I applaud you for.
Well, if you had just said it was a squelch, I'd have been like, yeah, but was it dry or moist?
Right? Yeah. Was it a dry
Because
squelch?
That's really. I mean, you're left me hanging with what kind of squelch it was.
I need more
I'm-
description.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
often when I hear the word squelch, I'm just waiting for somebody like, well, was it moist?
Exactly.
It's
There's so
all,
many.
It's like peanut butter and chocolate, right?
I mean, was it a warm squelch? Like we don't know if you don't
Right.
tell us. So,
Maybe a warm, moist squelch?
yeah. All right.
We're off the rails, man.
No, I thought that was really cool.
No, I thought
liked,
Where'd it come from? Like,
yeah.
I-
Tell us about your inspiration.
So it's funny, and I don't know how you guys do it usually with prompts, but this time around I found myself thinking, all right, here's the prompt: World Gone Geek, World Gone Geek. How do I end up at World Gone Geek? And the obvious one, which is something that I was going to start with, was, well, I mean, the definition, the whole point of our name, World Gone Geek, is the world has gone geek, right? All of a sudden, geek, nerd, all those interests have become more acceptable, and so the world has kind of gone that way. And then I thought, well, there's got to be another way to get to that and somehow use it. And so I started messing around with, well, what if we just can I split it up somehow? And then I got to world gone, and then geek. And so I'm like, okay. So then somebody has to make a statement that ends with some form of world gone, and then somebody has to call them out as a geek. And then I built from there. So I kind of built it from the end forward.
Gotcha.
And then it originally was just going to be an interview show with Dick Cavett. I'm like, I'm just going to switch letters around because I'm lazy and I only have 2 days to do this. So,
To be fair, you had a month.
Yeah. No. I'm not. It's all on me. I'm a procrastinist by nature. I'm one of the most optimistic people in the world because there's always later, always tomorrow.
That's me too.
And so, originally it was just going to be like kind of an interview show, and it was going to end with kind of basically what happened, which was, poof, somehow one guest was going to say, poof, the world's gone. And then the other person was just going to call him a geek. And then I don't know where this whole sci-fi horror robots turning their heads around to face you came from, but after I did that last line of world's gone and geek, it just kind of started coming out of my fingers, and I'm like, I really started digging it too. I'm like, that's kind of a really cool visual. I kind of like want to use it somehow, and so
that's creepy.
But you can also see how I wanted to continue that story. I want to continue on in this world. I wanted to flesh out a little bit more. But then I would still be typing. So.
Well, I mean, you just keep going now. You got to start it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
fair.
These prompts are all about, right? Like it's what I mean, I will definitely say, and I'll credit you guys, Matt and Ian, for reigniting my passion for telling stories. I've always wanted to be a writer when I was younger in high school. You couldn't stop me. I wrote so much crap, man. And then I wrote stories for English in college that I just still remember and couldn't find if I wanted to now. But I just absolutely loved it. And then there was just a point where I stopped, and I just, you know what I mean? I still had stories popping into my head. But at that point, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to make a movie about that someday, because I'm doing video and that's my focus now. But yeah, when we did this story last year, I was like, this was a great experience to write this. And so I literally started taking inspiration from all kinds of different places and just writing down ideas now. And my hope is to put together a short story compilation of my own at some point.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's funny how a prompt can do that. You know what I mean? It was just a goofy prompt, but it, especially that one. But for me, that story last year was it was kind of personal even, you know what I mean? From such a silly idea became something, super personal to me. Yeah. And I was like, this is great. It's so I was trying, I'm constantly inspired by songs and song titles and things like that. So I've got several playlists that will lead to short story compilations. I've decided
Very nice.
this playlist is this book and this playlist. So
Very
I've got books planned out for the next 8 years, but I'll, we'll see if I ever get around to writing. But no, it's a great to have that process. And that's why, I'm with what you said, Matt, I hope that Todd, that you'll continue that as well. I hope that if that's what you want to do, maybe you don't want to do that. You're like, that was enough for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I might just end it at moist squelch. I'm not sure I can go any further than that.
You have to expound upon moist squelch now. In fact, that should be the name of the book. Yeah,
that's going to be the title of my collection.
Moist squelch.
I don't know, man. If I saw a book on a shelf called Moist Squelch, I would approach with caution.
You would buy it. You would. You would buy it sight unseen.
No.
Matt would have it pre-ordered.
I'd be like,
want a signed copy.
I'd have to pull it out a little bit just to kind of see what was on the cover, and if there was a Fabio type, I'd just kind of push it back in.
I would totally work. I would totally work with a publisher to have some sort of coating on the book cover so that it wasn't dry. It felt a little.
Oh, dude! That just creeped me out.
No, my hands immediately got clammy just thinking about that.
It's so gross.
All right. Well, in the interest of time,
I love it, but that's gross.
Let's move on. Is this so? Do you want to go next, or Aaliyah? Is that what?
Yeah, sure. I'll go next.
Yeah. Can you read that again, Utah? Aaliyah's read it again and just say it's me now.
Yeah. So I do not have to read my story. I feel like I should definitely preface by saying I haven't.
You get a preface too?
My this just needs to be a preface about this story because yeah. Last year, obviously, I wrote a very short poem.
It was a lovely
It was
poem.
awesome though.
I remember being quite moved with that
Yeah, it
poem,
was
though.
good.
I think the poem was really good.
And Matt
Oh.
in poems. I mean,
Yeah,
saying a
that's
lot.
Takes a
true.
lot.
If I can get Matt in a poem, then I feel like it was a job well done for sure.
Well, lots of
100% of
things
the
rhyme with
time,
Matt.
though. 100% of the time, though, a poem being read by the poet is way better than me reading a poem by the poet, like
Fair.
in a book. It's
Yeah.
just
That's
not the
fair.
same. When someone is saying it, it's like that's cool because you're giving it the meter and the cadence it's supposed to
Yeah.
have. And I don't always know what to do with the words on the paper. That's my problem with poetry,
Yeah.
you know. And so,
Mhm.
yeah. So when
Especially
you
if there's
read
no
that, I thought it was
punctuation.
amazing. Yeah, exactly.
That's very true. Because I don't know. But I will say that I have not actually written a story in well over 10 years. So this is definitely the first one. So
Well, this is going to be good.
show me loads of grace.
Hey, these all of these are likely to be first drafts. I can't imagine
For
that
sure.
we wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't publish the one I wrote last year unless I went back and like did some things to it. I might even make it a little longer. You know what I mean? So absolutely, this is a first draft type of thing. So that's where we're coming from. It's all good.
Okay, cool. I didn't know what to title this. So I'm just going to leave it up to you guys at the end. I'm really bad with
So-
titles.
So untitled is what you're saying.
Yeah. It's untitled right now. Okay. He wanted me to say that the idea was dangerous and admit that I was too scared. And to appease him, I almost did. But if I'm being honest, friends, the idea was simple. I wasn't scared and it wasn't dangerous. It was maddeningly exhilarating and I knew exactly what I was going to do. But let's start at the beginning, shall we? In previous years, Sloane wasn't much of an adventurer. In fact, she was the exact opposite. Faithfully shy, quiet, and the embodiment of every introverted woman, except for when she was behind the mic. Behind the mic, she was faithfully bold, courageous, and loud. In high school, Sloane loved every minute of her double life. For years, she constantly floated between the two effortlessly and never really looked back as the feeling of being two different people was revitalizing. However, as she got older, now at a youthful age of 28, her two lives already collided and her podcast that was once just for fun grew. People listened regularly, and to Sloane's surprise, her followers were dedicated, active, and constantly wanting more. The I Am Woman podcast was born from a place of eagerly desiring other introverted women to be seen, heard, felt, and loved by, well, other women of God, but with a twist. Sloane urged herself to, yes, discuss the many intricacies of her womandom, but knew she must intertwine that with her love for nerdcore. One of the biggest things Sloane had always admired, from a distance, but admired nonetheless, was how fearless women of God could be. I mean, evangelism, participating on the worship team, or engaging in discipleship, becoming an avid faith-based Twitch streamer. Those ideas alone were enough to give Sloane an introvert attack. That's what she called being extremely overwhelmed by extrovert activities. She never dared, but faithfully prayed to be that woman. Bold, courageous, and loud. And on June 10th, 2023, God answered that prayer 10 times over. I can't believe it has officially been 10 years since God strategically and intentionally entrusted me, the introverted Sloane, with the I Am Woman podcast. Sloane exclaimed into the mic, "We have come so far, women, and as many of you already know, World Gone Geek Fest is this weekend. Hopefully, I will see many of you there since I'll be broadcasting live. And with that, we close out this week's episode. I'll see you all Saturday. Bye, women." Even as the words rolled off her tongue, she was still in complete shock. Sitting at the desk her mother, now passed, bought her, she thought, World Gone Geek Fest is the biggest faith-based gaming / nerdcore festival in the country created by women. And not only am I going to be broadcasting live, I'm a featured panelist and nominee for the podcast of the year. As Sloane drifted off into a deeper thought about the upcoming weekend festivities, the door crept open. Jolting her from her train of thought, Zelda, Sloane's 3-year-old cat, plopped herself onto her lap, making herself increasingly more comfortable. Sloane stroked her calico feline's friend's fur, accurately prompting the loud purring reaction. Sloane thought to herself again, what am I going to do if he's there? That was the one thought that repeatedly escaped her mind, and for good reason. See, although World Gone Geek Fest was created by women, it was facilitated by men, and one specific man occasionally made her way back into her mind. However daunting it was, he did indeed occasionally make his way back. Maverick had swagger. He moved and grooved with the type of charisma only specific men have, and he knew it, just as he knew how to get her, one would say, hooked every single time. And boy, did he get her hooked every single time. Not to mention, he was rated one of the top Twitch streamers and the largest donor to World Gone Geek Fest. And today just happened to be his birthday, and she already knew where he was. Now, the big question was, should she go? She danced, yet carefully perused the idea of surprising him at their spot. Well, technically her spot, but she graciously allowed him to take claim as well. Zelda, should I go see him? She asked. Zelda, completely uninterested in anything other than the soft strokes to her fur, looked up at her, blinked softly, and placed her head back down on Sloane's left leg. She knew she could choose to take as the rightful no it was, or she'd listen to the very soft yes that was swirling around inside of her. And to no surprise, she listened to the yes. Sloane picked Zelda up and placed her head on her shoulder. She slowly pushed herself from her desk, slid the chair underneath, and walked to her closet door to find something a little more outdoorsy. She placed Zelda on her roughly made bed and got dressed. She put on some black leggings, a gray oversized hoodie, his gray oversized hoodie, and a black beanie, also his, as the letter M was embroidered on it. She said aloud, no wonder I can move on, God. I still have all of his stuff. She quickly took off his hoodie and beanie, threw on a black tank, rain jacket, and went downstairs. She put her shoes on and grabbed her essentials, phone, keys, wallet, and ran out the door. Their spot was only a 15-minute drive from her apartment, and as she pulled into a parking lot full of cars, only one stood out, his. The black Jeep Wrangler that was once his dad's. She always knew it was his because of the gold cross hanging from his mirror and a bumper sticker that read Ephesians 2:8, a Bible verse that got her through plenty. Sloane got out of her vehicle and ventured toward a trail that many hadn't tread as the brush was still pretty high, but noticeably traveled. As she walked, slowly coming up to the spot they had met time and time again, she couldn't help but to finally think, how was this actually supposed to go? We hadn't spoken almost a year, and immediately anxiety started to overwhelm her, so she did what she should have done in the first place. She prayed. She lifted her head, opened her eyes, and there he was standing right in front of her. Their eyes staring directly at each other. He said, I wasn't sure if you'd show Marie, Sloane's middle name. He always called her that. She hated it, of course. Sloane smirked, casually rolling her eyes at the middle name comment, and walked closer to him. Happy birthday, Mr. Turk. He chuckled a bit and said, man, you know I hate that. Come on, let's go to our spot before someone takes it. So they hiked up the steep hill and then back down, which eventually led them to God's Cove. At least that's what they called it. Sloane found God's Cove when she first moved into her apartment. An avid hiker and outdoorsy woman, she constantly craved adventure since moving to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The cove was surrounded by trees, and in the pit, a spring that many, including Maverick, would cliff jump into. Sloane didn't partake then because she was terrified of heights. It was roughly noon, and the sun was scorching. Thanking herself for taking off the hoodie, his hoodie. How hot is it outside? Sloane asked. 86 degrees. It's supposed to get up to 95, he replied. They made their way to a shaded tree just overlooking the spring. He already packed everything, she snarkled. Prepared as usual, huh? He didn't respond, just looked and paused as if he was thinking about what to say, but decided otherwise as he continued unpacking his bag. Sloane didn't even realize he had a bag with him when they first made eye contact, or even as they hiked up here. She was too focused on the fact that they were together again after all this time. But she still watched as he removed various drinks and snacks from his bag. 2 of everything, she noticed. Trying to convince herself to speak up, he broke the silence and asked, aren't you going to get into the water? Sloane, very much unprepared, said, no, you know I didn't bring my bathing suit. I was never as organized as you. He pulled her old swimsuit from his bag, and said, "Good thing I know you." He responded with a sneaky grin. Sloane knew her facial expression said exactly how surprised she was that he still had it, because he immediately followed up with, "It's not that deep. I just hadn't seen you, and since your mom bought it, I didn't want to throw it away." "See? Hooked," she thought, grabbing the bright orange swimsuit from him and thanking him for bringing it back. Sloane got up and walked a good distance into the trees to change. As she walked back, she couldn't help but to think, is this the same man that walked away from her when she needed him the most? My mom just passed, she thought. My mom just passed, she said aloud, not necessarily caring, as they weren't that close to each other yet. They never had that conversation, and she wasn't sure when they should. Was this the right time? But is there ever a right time? She thought. As she made her way back to the picnic area, Sloane asked if he was excited for World Gone Geek Fest. He said, "Of course. That is the best time of the year. Tons of gamers, cosplayers, voice actors, so many people, plus a sponsor that I've been trying to get for my channel for the longest." Sloane knew exactly who he was talking about, because so had she. World Gone Geek. They weren't just iconic faith-based all-female leaders of the biggest festival in the United States, but they were leaders in podcasting and streaming. They made podcasting and streaming history through their legendary content and guests. And Maverick wanted them, of course. But so did she, of course. Switching the subject, Sloane asked, "Are you going to get into the water as well?" He looked up at her, smiled, and said, "I thought about it, but only if you jump." "You know my response to that," I snarled. He replied, "Come on, Marie, jump." I gave him the look, prompting him to quickly follow up with, "Okay, I will back off World Gone Geek if," pausing momentarily, then swallowing hard, he continued, "if you jump." We were both staring down at the spring, and the thing is, he wanted me to say that the idea was dangerous and admit that I was too scared, and to appease him, I almost did. But if I'm being honest, friends, the idea was simple. I wasn't scared, and it wasn't dangerous. It was maddeningly exhilarating, and I knew exactly what to do. I grabbed his hand and plunged us both into the water. The end.
That was a good ending.
Nicely done. I love how World Gone Geek
It's now a fest.
is now a festival.
You guys got big.
And it's
That's
all
like wish-
female.
well,
Sorry, that's why I
yeah,
chuckled in the
before you lost
beginning.
it.
It's partially wishful moment. I was like, oh, I'd love to have a convention, and then she's like, all female.
World Gone
like,
Geek
well,
Fest.
well, crap.
Sorry. Mhm. Yeah.
That's
World
great.
Gone Female Geek.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
I figured I would just do the opposite of what's actually. Yeah. Anyway.
No, I thought
No,
that was great.
Yeah, no,
And
I thought it was great.
The introvert attack. That was a good
That's
little
a nice.
phrase. I like that.
That's a
I
good
can
term.
relate.
Yeah, I like that.
So,
Thank you.
what was your inspiration for this? Was any of it based on like
Art,
actual
was it
relationship
imitating
type
life?
stuff, or
No, it was
Okay.
not. I honestly just didn't know what to write about. At first, I was going to write about a disgruntled teen. I don't know. I didn't know what to write about, so I just started writing, and then this is what we came up with.
Well-
Any of it based in real life? Any of it?
No.
like yourself.
Well,
Not
Does
no.
is Maverick mullet guy?
No. No,
Does he have a
Maverick is
purple
not.
yeah, does he
sword?
have a mullet?
or is he purple demon sword guy?
Oh no. I was actually going to I just didn't. I'm also a procrastinator. I was actually going to base like the middle of it. So I was going to base it off of like a dream, right? Like it was all just going to be a dream that she had. And then go more in depth into the dream. Like the dreams were basically going to tell her reality, if that makes sense.
so
But I didn't have time to kind of navigate.
So
that.
I have a quick, just like kind of observation, and then I'm just curious if there's any like weight to it. Like, what I found interesting was how like the character at the beginning, like throughout the whole thing, we're talking about a very independent woman. She's like, I mean, like, and by the way, I wrote down a possible title. I think "I Am Woman" would be a great title. because it was the name of her podcast or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like it, at least at the beginning until the very end, it was like she was almost still looking for the approval of this guy. And she couldn't get past that until she like literally grabbed his hand and jumped. Like, is there any of that like might have like stemmed from inside? Where is there like a woman that's like screaming to get out, but you feel held back or anything like that? Or
I don't know. I mean, I don't.
Because don't let these
I don't know.
jokers
I
hold
mean,
you
I
back.
feel
Like,
like
roar.
I definitely. That would be like
Please.
that goes into like a lot of deeper rooted daddy issues that we don't really need to talk about on the
Well,
podcast.
I mean,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I
Well,
often
you know.
find that like in reflection, like a lot of the stuff that I end up writing about might have some like deep seated like emotional
rooted.
tie with.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, like,
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I don't know. I didn't really give that part too much thought, but I'm sure it does. I mean, you know, I'm a
But-
woman who's her
but
father didn't want.
I really do like the
in-
way she kind of took charge at the end, because there was even that moment when she was getting dressed to go where she was like, "Wait, I'm in
Yeah,
his
there's still that
clothes.
uncertainty.
Like,
Yeah.
I need to."
I
be-
like that. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
So I think
I don't
we
know.
saw like a
I
true
appreciate it.
character arc like throughout this whole thing. I
Yeah,
thought
it was a
really
well
good.
thought out character.
Yeah.
The only part that
She
I
felt real.
realized didn't actually like I didn't realize that I had messed up. So in the beginning I said that she's not really that outdoorsy, but then I said, oh yeah, she's an avid outdoorsy person. So I like messed those
That's
things
what
up.
the first draft happens.
That's all right.
I find myself doing that constantly.
You just got a
Yeah.
couple words to delete and you're good.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's easy
Yeah.
to
No,
fix.
I definitely do want to actually tweak it and make it as though like
Yeah.
this is her sleeping, but her dream is because I have too weird of crazy dreams not to be like.
I mean,
writing about them.
and that could be that whole thing
No,
could be interpreted as
I
like
think
a
you should
dream.
go with the dreams.
You like you
Yeah.
jump and she wakes up and she was like, "Wait, I don't need him." And then I am woman. Yeah.
I am woman. I am
Hear me
legend.
roar.
I'm seeing a short film
Nice.
here.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Really well done.
Thanks.
All right. Well, it's my turn, so I'm going to preface as well.
All right. Hold
And-
on to
and-
your butts.
And I can't wait. I really was looking forward to this because I want to talk to you and Matt and Ian about this and whether or not you sometimes encounter what I'm encountering. So I'll just tell you the main character in my story is not a good person. He is a racist. He's a misogynist. He is a rapist. He's a bad guy. Right.
So
And
James Bond.
it
I'm
became,
kidding.
Wow.
right,
Whoa.
it became
Whoa.
very difficult for me at times to like I knew what I wanted this character to do and say, and then I was like, I can't do it. Like I can't bring myself to write some of the things that I felt like he would say. And it was so that's I'm giving you first of all as a preface that he's gonna say some things that aren't pleasant. But they're very tame compared to what I was thinking. So I'm sure you can imagine some of the things that could have come out of his mouth if I was gonna go there. And I wouldn't, at least not on this show. But do you guys ever have a situation where you've written a character that is so despicable that you get that ick factor trying to write for him?
Yeah, I for the longest time would not write from an antagonist point of view because I didn't want to have to one be in their head, but also have to write them convincingly.
Yeah.
But then I broke that rule at some point, and even with my current work in progress, the one character I had whose head I had to be in my head, he was a very dark person, and I don't think probably in the end I communicated probably as well as I could have if I would have put everything on paper that I thought, exactly what you're describing. But it's just like I don't want to write that stuff, and I don't you start to psych yourself out like, well, if I write this, what are people going to think about me? And I also want to maintain a level of like accessibility, and I don't want to write something that
And I want you to get to the end of the story too, because
Right.
it's not all that. Like
But-
it's not.
but when you're
there's a
living with it
point
in
to
your
it.
head, it's
Yeah.
like you see everything and hear everything that person would do, and it does kind of bother you a little bit. But then you realize it's all coming out of your own head also.
Right.
Which is
And
sometimes like the part
it's
that's
But
well,
it's
to,
but
That's
to
I'm
me
that's probably the
that's
more
just
disturbing
the
part, right?
well, I'm
well.
writing a
So
character that based on like
it's stuff you
reality.
observe,
Yeah,
perhaps,
stuff
right, in
exactly,
everyday
not stuff I
life.
actually think.
But
right.
the ease in which you were able to put that character together, though, I think doesn't betray like you as a messed up person. I think it just betrays the universal sort of like depravity of humanity kind of a thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how
And that's
anyone in the right situation could fall into, a really bad spot.
Well, and I think even the fact that you are recognizing this as a despicable character
yeah.
means
Already.
you're okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
if
no, I know. I want to
yeah,
make. I'm just saying, like I don't have a problem with like I read Stephen King stuff, and he writes
sure.
some just disgusting people
Sure.
sometimes.
Right, right.
But I sometimes I wonder, dude, like where did that come from? But I know that he's a normal guy who's not gonna, you know what I mean, who doesn't
Right.
really believe those things. So but that's Stephen King, right? He's been doing this for, longer than
Sure.
I've been alive almost. So
But if he wouldn't have taken that risk, he wouldn't be Stephen King.
right.
You know
And
what I
so
mean? Like
that's what I'm talking about. It's less about whether I can do it. I know I can write it.
yeah.
And yeah, I'll feel icky while I'm doing it. But I also don't want other people to be like, dude, why did he go there? You know what I mean? Well, because this is like a horror story and it went there.
Right.
Like it is what it is. So I just want to preface that, and so that you guys at least know that there's a bad person in this.
Yeah.
And yeah. And it's in third person. I tend to, and we'll talk about it after. I wanted to ask sometimes what inspires you guys. I mean, both Utah and Aaliyah today went in first person, and I wonder, and I listen to you guys, and sometimes you guys will do one or the other, and so I wonder what kind of inspires you to do that. For me, it should be obvious. I did not want to be this guy and be speaking from his perspective, but no, it needs to be third person for the purpose of the story anyway.
Gotcha.
All right, so I guess I'll read it.
Let's go.
Now we've prefaced all of that. Here we go. All right, the name of the story is Cold as Stone. Those urinals aren't going to clean themselves. Randy raised his head upon hearing this and stared into the eyes of his supervisor, Terrence Keene. And Terrence balked. Randy caught the hesitation. He lifted a cigarette to his mouth, took a long drag, his eyes never wavering from the stare. Then he dropped the cigarette to the concrete. Terrence tore his eyes away from Randy's and watched it fall, bounce twice with an orange spark, and then be subdued into fragments and ash beneath the toe of Randy's boot. Randy's eyes never left Terrence. Terrence now looked up from the flattened smoke and willed himself to return Randy's gaze. With a sigh, Randy pushed himself away from the wall he'd been leaning on and turned to face Terrence. Terrence recoiled and slid out of the way to allow Randy to move past him and re-enter the building. The Tylersburg Tri-County Convention Center floor was alive with activity. Hundreds of vendors, conventioneers, and exhibitors filled the cavernous room. The cacophony of 100 conversations grated on Randy's ears. Just inside the door, his dirty yellow bucket and mop, as well as a cart full of cleaning supplies, toilet paper, and attached waste bin, awaited him. He looked at both with a scowl and begrudgingly began pushing the mop bucket and pulling the cart behind. He glanced back to see Terrence re-entering the building as well, dabbing at his forehead with a handkerchief and deliberately looking practically anywhere in the world but at Randy. Pissant, Randy muttered. Randy had encountered countless pissants in his life. There was the pissant who worked the counter at the little dine and dash on 8th who'd called the cops on Randy when he was 13. There was the pissant cop who tricked him into spilling the truth about what happened to that girl. There was the pissant in the cheap suit and cheaper cologne who the county assigned to represent him in court. The judge had been another pissant, spouting condescending gibberish about the law, Randy's stubborn refusal to act civilly and peacefully within it, society at large, and Randy's clear danger to it. The girl's pissant father who should have raised a daughter who didn't dress like a slut and ask for it. The guards up at Maxwell Maximum Security Penitentiary were all pissants, and the warden was Lord High and Holy of all pissants, may he die and rot and have rats nest in his innards. If Randy thought 26 years had perhaps been enough time away in Maxwell Max to then re-enter a society that had begun to rid itself of pissants, His pissant Mexican parole officer and his limp specimen of a man, Terrence, soon divested him of that notion. The pissants somehow were always the ones in charge, Randy noted. Now here he was, pushing a mop with a cleaning cart trailing behind him through the throng of colorful weirdos that populated the convention center. To his left were a gaggle of nerds dressed in the uniforms of that old space show from years back that never seemed to die, but only spawned more and more ridiculous and irritating incarnations with only slightly better special effects. On his right was a pear-shaped idiot poured into a Spider-Man costume, and walking straight towards him was a man in a red and black leather suit and mask combo, garnished with a frilly pink tutu. Randy could only assume what kind of screwed up, kinky nonsense that son of a bitch got up to. As Randy made his way towards the West Wing bathrooms, he passed more and more unusual and ridiculously costumed people from all manner of comic book, movie, and television lore. They all perused booths full of toys, books, art, and other nerd paraphernalia with a kind of glee that just made Randy's blood boil. Damn, he muttered. Has the whole world gone geek? Pretty much, came a voice from his left. Randy started and turned towards the voice, ready to spit venom. His eyes fell into a large humanoid form, seemingly made of stone or hardened clay. At least 7 feet tall, it towered over Randy, who was no slouch at 6'3". Its eyes, unmoving, unblinking, were carved deep into a bullet-shaped head and seemed to stare directly over Randy's head. Its torso was a wide, solid earthen trunk supported by 2 massive, muscular stone legs. The arms of the man, were bulging with stone muscles as well and came together to grasp the granite hilt of a tremendous sword held point to the ground. Down here, said the voice. Randy lowered his eyes from the inanimate creature to see a perfectly animate young woman, 5'4", dressed mostly in black, her dark hair tied back into a top knot. She was, or could be, pretty, Randy thought, if she removed some of the makeup and yanked that bull ring out of her nose. But this, I wouldn't throw her out of bed, he thought. But then his time with the last woman he'd been with was the reason he called Maxwell Max home for nearly 3 decades. This one smiled at him. That threw Randy off a bit. Women typically didn't do that to him unless they were making fun of him. Those smiles he wanted to smack off their faces and had done so on more than one occasion. I see you've met Golemite, this one said, addressing the stone creature before him. You a fan? No, Randy said, frowning. Not a nerd. The woman gasped, mocking offense, and then laughed. Randy tensed up. Honey, nerd stuff is in, bruh. Where have you been? Weird is cool now. The nerds are in charge. Randy frowned. You don't say. I've been away a while. It's all good, she replied. Golemite here's a stone guardian who fights for justice and peace. Justice and peace, eh? Randy scoffed. She leaned in as if to confide. And to avenge the oppressed? Randy was momentarily distracted as what appeared to be a tall, walking, talking carpet strode by the crowd. His eyes then returned to her. Oppressed, he said. It was a statement. She turned to address the booth behind her that the Golemite, had she said, stood guard over. The banner above the booth read, Golemite the Vindicator, and the walls of the booth were populated with a variety of action shots from some comic book, Randy guessed, featuring the titular stone monstrosity. Behind the table stood a lanky African-American man in a gray sweatshirt, emblazoned with the same creature. Randy's frown deepened when he laid eyes on the man. That's Dubois Collins, the woman continued. L'artiste génial. My mom had a thing for W.E.B., Dubois said, extending his hand. Randy did not take the offered hand, only eyed it suspiciously, and Dubois pulled it back and glanced at the woman, brow furrowed. I'm Abby, the woman said. I write. DB is mi compagnon d'armes who takes the pretty pictures, or makes the pretty pictures. Golemite's 5 years old this year. That's so, Randy said. That's so. We just struck a deal with Netflix for a series run. Randy had no idea what a Netflix was, and his eyes moved from Abby to Dubois to 2 placards on the table. On one was printed Dubois Collins, artist, while the other read Abby Spiegel, writer. Randy chuckled dryly. Spiegel, he said. It was not a question. At this, Abby's own brow furrowed. Yeah, that's me. Randy lowered his eyes and shook his head. Figures. Dubois edged closer to the side of the table, ready to come around if needed, and said, "What exactly do you mean by that?" Randy looked at him, then back at Abby. "Nothing," Randy said, sizing Dubois up with his eyes. Then his eyes returned to Abby. "Though it is surprising, I guess." "What's surprising?" Abby said. Randy began to turn away and take his bucket and cart. "Hey," Abby said, "what's your deal?" Randy stopped for a moment and turned back to them. "I'm just surprised to see a Jew and a black man working together." A sly smile ran across Randy's face. "But I suppose that's the way of the world now." "What the Dubois spat, fists clenched, before Abby cut him off with a wave. "I think you should move on, Pops," Abby said. "Sure thing," Randy said, and the wheels of the cart and mop bucket squealed as he pushed his way through the costumed crowd. Before he got too far, he glanced back at the booth, hoping to revel in the pathetic anger of that painted harlot and her companion, but instead his eyes fell on the Golemite statue. He stopped for a moment, then shook his head. There was no way those blankly staring granite eyeballs were now looking at him, right? The night sky was a cloudy and a chill was the air, but as cold as it was still unseasonably warm for late February. Randy couldn't much care if it was cold or hot. He looked up to the gray expanse above him, could just make out a few stars through a split in some of the crowds, and just breathed in the feeling of freedom that was still only a few weeks old for him. He took a deep breath and immediately regretted it as he inhaled the burnt popcorn smell of the ethanol plant across the river. Randy occupied his usual spot against the wall outside the building's west wing exit door, adding to the growing pile of cigarette butts on the concrete next to him. The nerds were almost all gone now, shuffling out of the exits, loaded down with the day's bits and baubles, acquired at prices that made Randy wonder how all these basement dwellers were able to have so much disposable cash. Terrence emerged from the doorway, pulling his coat close to himself. He stopped when he saw Randy and did not even try to cover his obvious sigh. "Randy," Terrence said. "Terrence," Randy replied. "I know you did the bathrooms earlier," Terrence rolled his eyes, "but one of the visitors drank too much butterbeer and puked in the third stall of the ladies' west." "Butter what?" "Doesn't matter. I'm afraid I'm going to need you to take care of that tonight." Terrence peered at him. "Can you do that?" Randy nodded. "Thanks." Terrence started to pull away. "Philip will leave you at 11 for the night. I'll see you tomorrow afternoon." "How long are the dorks here?" Randy asked. Terrence frowned. "They're here through Sunday. Don't let any of the visitors hear you talk like that. This is one of our biggest events of the year." Randy chuckled. "Anyway," Terrence looked up the gray sky, "they say it's supposed to rain. Maybe I can beat it home. Good night, Randy." Randy grunted. Terrence scurried off towards the parking lot, and Randy stomped out the butt of his latest cigarette. He turned and re-entered the building, pulled the door closed behind him, and made sure it latched. Then he grabbed hold of his mop and cart and made his way to the ladies' room. There were a few straggling vendors still working on their booths as he moved across the convention floor. Patrolling up the center aisle, he saw Greg Lane, the night guard, who gave Randy a curt nod. Randy didn't nod back. He knew Greg would make a show of it until all the vendors were gone and then head back to the guard room and watch TV on his phone. Randy still didn't understand how that worked, or sleep. Randy reached the ladies' room and took a door stopper out of his cart. He opened the door and wedged the rubber stop under it. Turning towards the stalls, he heard the door sliding shut as the door prop failed to find purchase on the slick floor. "Damn it," Randy said, and turned back towards the door. A startled voice came from one of the stalls. "Hey, someone's in here." Randy abandoned the door and looked towards the stalls. "We're closing. Everybody's got to get out." The frustrated voice said, "Maybe I can finish wiping my ass first?" "Hey, lady, do what you got to do, but beat it." "Some privacy, maybe?" The woman was really getting annoyed now. Randy shrugged and turned towards the door. He pushed it open, stayed right where he was, and let the door close. His eyes were trained on the stalls. Eventually, a flush was heard, and he heard the woman fumbling at the latch. When the stall door opened or swung back, Abby Spiegel emerged from it and gave a startled shout when she saw Randy still there. "What the hell, man?" She turned beet red. "The frack is wrong with you?" I didn't see nothing, Randy said. It doesn't matter. It's wholly inappropriate. She refused to come close to him and edged over to the sink to wash her hands. I have to report this, you piece of... Hey, hey, Randy lifted his hands in surrender, slowly walking towards her. It was a joke. I've been kind of out of things for a while. I forget myself sometimes, especially around women. I haven't spent a lot of time with them in years, as you can imagine. I wouldn't mind spending some time with you. Yeah, she scoffed. I don't care if you've been upriver for a half century. This was never appropriate behavior. Back off. He lowered his head and kept his hands up. I hear you. No harm done. I'm sorry. Was just thinking maybe we could get together later tonight. My shift ends at 11. Abby could feel her blood turning cold, her skin crawl, and her heart was climbing up into her throat. She didn't feel confident about making it to the door safely. She cursed herself inwardly for leaving her phone and bag in the booth. Not freaking likely, Abby said, teeth clenched. Randy reached out and brushed her hair, and she jerked away, hip hugging the row of sinks to avoid getting nearer to him, and pushed her way to the door. Abby knew she should keep moving and pushed harder towards the door. Abby shuddered and I'm sorry, I got lost. Abby shuddered and pushed through the door, practically running for her booth. Randy caught the door and watched her, figuring he was going to catch hell for this tomorrow, and wondering if he'd just chalk this parole up as a loss and follow her to her car. Nah, he thought. That pissant Terrence is weak-willed. He'd take his chances with him and try again with her tomorrow. He pulled in his supplies and got to work. When Randy had finished his work in the bathroom, he wrestled his cart and mop bucket back out to the show floor. Only about a third of the overhead lights were on now, leaving the booths and displays below in shadowed gloom that unnerved him. The vendors were all gone, as was Greg, who was probably halfway through a phone movie by now or sawing logs. Randy didn't like it much when the place was empty and dark like this. He wasn't afraid, mind you, but the steel and concrete surroundings and the deep silence reminded him too much of Lights Out at Maxwell. He only had about a half hour left on his shift, which would be spent in the employee break room alone, eating a candy bar from the machine and listening to the time clock tick away the final minutes until he would return to his shabby apartment behind the bowling alley. He pushed his cart into the maintenance room and tucked it into a corner and began the process of rinsing his mop and dumping out the filthy water into the industrial sink. When he was finished, he put his hands behind his back, bent backwards a little, stretching. He heard it pop satisfactorily and straightened up, closed his eyes for a moment, and begrudgingly embraced the silence. The silence was soon interrupted by a crash from out on the show floor that nearly made him jump out of his skin. He rushed to the door and looked around. There was no sound now, only the silence. He squinted as he peered across the immense darkened room. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing. He listened again. Nothing. Damn it, Greg, he thought to himself. Get out here and do your job. Randy started walking down past the aisles of tables, glancing down each aisle to see if he could see anything out of place, toppled over, or otherwise askew. For 4 aisles, he sees and hears nothing. Then he hears a thump that causes him to spin around. He was quite sure that it had come from the concession stand area. I bet those stupid kids stacked the soda syrup boxes too high, he said to himself. They probably fell down. He made his way towards the stand. If I have to clean up another mess. But there was nothing amiss in the storeroom behind the concession stand. Randy gave it one more look and then flicked off the storeroom light. He turned, ready to head back to the employee lounge, when he saw a shadow move between the booths down aisle 400. Hey, he yelled. What the hell? You got to get out of here. He started walking down towards the row where he'd seen the movement. You hear me? You better not be stealing crap. He peered through the shadows between the booth, a smile running across his mouth. He relished the idea of getting to beat down one of these comic nerds. There was more movement. This movement sounded like rocks grinding together. Randy stepped forward towards the gap between the 2 booths and emerged on the other side of the aisle and froze. Out of the shadows rose a gigantic figure, towering over Randy, its form blocking out the dim overhead emergency lights. It moved slowly towards him, and Randy backed up once again, squeezing between the booth piping. Listen, you costume freak, he said. Look, I'm going to call the guard. Randy pulled his radio off the back of his belt, but before he could lift it to his head, he felt his neck pinched between what felt like a giant vice, and he was being lifted from the ground. The radio clattered to the ground as Randy was flung like a sack of marbles into an artist's booth. He broke through the folding table and landed hard on his back, pen and ink drawings of various supernatural creatures raining down around him. He pushed up on his elbows and began furiously scooting backwards away from the figure that had tossed him. His bell had been rung pretty good and his vision was blurry and pink, but he could see a massive shape stepping over the broken table in pursuit. Randy finally backed into a folding chair and quickly used it to haul himself, dazed, to his feet. Before he could move another step, however, the vice grip that was now crushing his left shoulder and another vice grip joined it on the right. In moments, Randy felt his feet dangling above the ground and his face was nose to nose with the cold, hard granite glare of the statue from the Golemite booth. It was making a strangled, horrible, gurgling, screeching sound, and it took nearly 5 whole seconds before he realized the sound was actually coming from his own throat. He choked and coughed and tried desperately to push away from the creature, his hands grasping and clawing at its cold and rocky chest. His fingers came away dripping with blood. The creature tightened its grip on Randy's shoulders, and Randy was pretty damn sure he'd heard something pop in the right one. The pain was so excruciating that it had passed over into numbness, and everything that was happening to him seemed to be happening far, far away. The creature leaned back slightly, and then his massive, solid head came crashing forward into Randy's face. Randy was sure his nose was broken, and probably his skull around his left eye. That damage assessment was his last thought as darkness overtook him. The next day, a poor single dad and his 11-year-old son were the ones to come upon a body floating in the river near the regatta stage where they were fishing. When the body was recovered, it was determined to be that of one Randy Volker, 54, recently of 37A Cedar Terrace, formerly of Maxwell Maximum Security Penitentiary. Nearly every bone in his body was pulverized, and his face appeared to have been smashed in by a large blunt object. Police were baffled. Abby got this news from Terrence when she approached him to report Randy's behavior from the previous evening. She shivered when he described the state of Randy's corpse. She felt revulsion and relief simultaneously as she slowly made her way back to the booth. She scooted past the statue of Golemite in order to reach her chair, and her sneaker slipped in some water pooled there and grasped onto Golemite's arm to steady herself. She looked down and saw that there was a little bit of water pooled around the feet of the statue. Looking up into the golem's face, she noticed a red smear across the left side of its squarish nose. She wiped it away with her hand and looked around nervously. "Everything good?" Dubois asked. She absently nodded and sat down at the table, grabbing a tissue from a nearby container and wiping her fingers. She worked up a smile, squirted some hand sanitizer into her hands, and greeted a fan who approached with a mint condition Golemite the Valiant #1 sealed behind glass. On the cover, Golemite was lifting an evildoer by the shoulders as chaos rained down around them. Abby took a Sharpie and signed the glass on the frame. Golemite the statue stood guard above her. And that's it. That's the story. All right.
Wow.
So
quite the tale.
I can't help about like thinking about like what you were asking beforehand, and it's just like you know, when you it's almost like when you're writing about these terrible things like happening, you wonder if there's something almost like something wrong in your head. Where you're like wishing like this upon somebody, like, do I really want to be writing this? And but I mean, like, I feel like Randy got what he deserved, right? I mean, like, it might have been like a little too much, but I mean, like,
it's funny. That's where the some of the difficulty of telling a story like this runs. I want to make him evil enough to deserve it, right?
Yeah.
But I also don't want to write about how evil he is. So I threw a lot of subtle hints into just how sick he was. Hopefully that came across.
It was nicely done.
Without being too graphic or
Twilight Zone-y to me.
Yeah, you did a really good job of
it's funny you
dancing
mentioned
around the evil and very Twilight Zone.
it's so not Twilight Zone, but Creep Show was kind of my
Creepshow.
inspiration for
Yeah.
that, which is
Oh, okay.
similar type of
Never seen
thing,
that.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah, yeah.
horror. But it was Stephen King. It was Creep Show, like where the evil bad person, something bad happens to them because they're bad, and it's like a very
It's
simple
always-
kind of age old tale or whatever. But I wanted it to be like that kind of pulpy, Creep Show type of homage, I guess.
Yeah, the line that really cemented him as like truly evil to me was when he said something along the lines of, maybe I should just chalk this parole up to a loss and go follow her or whatever. And I'm
go
like,
follow
oh
her.
yeah, like this is
Yeah.
like, that's like way more like
Yeah.
serious than just calling somebody a nerd. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
Right.
that
so
that
I mean,
that was a
Yeah.
powerful line. That struck me as
Yeah.
well.
Well, there were some other, I mean, besides the, obviously making a racist statement about, Jewish people and black people. There was more that I would have had him say in there, but again, that felt wrong. It just felt wrong to
Well,
write. But again, that's the type of unfortunately, that's a person that exists. Like that's
Right.
not,
I think
I'm
got
not
the point
making this
across.
up.
You don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the sentiment was there.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think you did a good job of. I mean, I think that was more than enough to cement that Randy was not a good guy. I feel like if you went any further and more graphic in all the bad things that he would have said or done, that might have been too much. I like that you kind of kept it at that first sort of layer, that tier, because then that leaves a little bit to the imagination. Like, oh, well, I
Right.
think what he really thinks.
Well, I mean, Matt, you picked, I think, the line that was supposed to, because I hint at why he was there for 26 years was the rape of a woman, and now he's like obviously not been rehabilitated.
Still in
like,
that,
this is a
right,
guy
yeah.
who shouldn't have been let out. He's just like, oh well, now I can get back to work. Kind of like that's just how sick, kind of. I don't know.
yeah. I think the choice to like have him recently released from prison was really smart too, because like it kind of shows the separation of the like his absence from the world, and like he totally missed 26 years of like life.
Yeah.
So like he's not
And-
sure what a Netflix is or whatever.
Right.
There's like little stuff
Yeah,
like
that was
where
funny.
It's just like where it's just like he not only is he evil, like inherently evil, but he's
out of
also just
time.
he's just out of touch with everything.
And that's and kind of like that's sort of a statement that I was trying to make too, that there are people who haven't been away for 26 years that still hold this attitude, and that's worse. Obviously, it's like what the how have we not learned something in the last 30 years
Sure.
that has made us better people as a society?
Well, and I mean, it could also be read as commentary on the prison system itself, because I
That
mean,
too,
isn't
yeah.
the whole purpose is to rehabilitate him to re-enter society, and that obviously didn't happen. in
Obviously
this
failed.
case.
A
Right.
lot of
Yeah.
times they recommit a crime just to go back in because they don't feel like they fit in society.
Well, sure,
Right.
right?
So I love that.
Shawshank Redemption, right?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I almost kind of like had him say that. That's you notice that he doesn't like it when the lights go out at night, because it feels like
It reminds
Yeah.
him of
lights out.
Yeah.
That was the same kind of thing, but at this, at the same time, while it unnerved him, it still was like that's where
There was still
where
comfort.
he's used to.
That's what he knew.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, I think if I rewrote, and I probably will go back to this and rewrite. There's a lot more detail I want to put into how he, the golem attacks him and things.
Well,
like that too.
there was description in there that like it's one of those things where sometimes I listen to Ian and I get jealous of it, but it was right at the beginning when the cigarette hit the ground.
Oh,
Like all of that with like the orange ash bouncing and the boot crushed, like all of that was just perfect, and it's something that just like doesn't happen for me. So I'm always like in awe of people who can do stuff like that and still keep it going without like slowing the narrative down.
did you guys pick out where the moist squelch would have been
Yes.
after I thought
Yes,
about
I was going to say something. about
Yes.
I was gonna
Yes.
say it's probably while he was being crushed, his like windpipe could
I was
have let out
thinking
a
that-
moist.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. When he
Yeah.
gets head butted.
Yeah, when he gets the headbutt, it's like
Yeah.
I'm thinking like with a moist with a moist
That's-
squelch, he realized that his nose was probably broken and his skull around the left eye. Yeah.
That's exactly where I would have put it. Yeah, that's
But
So-
I don't know. Yeah.
so. Did Abby?
I also think I wrote the best first line of a short story. I love, so I don't know if you guys have heard of this contest where people try to write the worst opening line to a book. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
don't have to write anything else. It's just like this
Just
the one
opening
line.
line is just terrible.
Right.
Right,
And
like
so-
it happened on a cold and rainy. Yeah,
Dark and
Yeah.
stormy night.
That's
Yeah.
the
I want in.
that's the
This is
That's-
a real
that's-
contest.
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
is.
remember the name of it.
I feel like I would definitely
It's
win
called
that.
A Dark and Stormy Night. Like the
Yeah.
you nailed
and
it.
there are
That's what it's
some, and the winners are like they always
Some of 'em
release
are
like the
bad.
top
Brilliant.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them are fantastic.
It's so funny. You're just like, oh my gosh. Like you don't think about it. I'm like, well, I don't know. What is the bad line? And then you're like, you read some of the ones that really creative authors have come up with, and it's just like,
And
oh
you're
gosh.
like, oh,
Like you have to be
yeah.
a great writer to write that badly. You know what I'm saying?
yes, correct, exactly.
Which is kind of awesome. And then so I was like, that's why I felt, I'm like, this is pulpy, this is creep show, this is, 80s King, you know what I mean, when he was early in his career. What would be like a really weird way to start the story?
I think
so that's where that came
a
from.
more interesting way, and this is where I think I was going with the Twilight Zone thing, would be to have and you would have had to expound it upon Golemite. Is that what you called him?
Yeah.
I just wanted to call him Gollum, but like the Golemite legend, you would have to expound it on a little bit, maybe to make this work. But I was thinking, like, if you would have had the Golemite subsume Randy, and then Randy has to like embody and fulfill the duty of the Golemite, so he has to then
Interesting.
protect all the people he doesn't like, and basically
Oh,
do all these
interesting.
good deeds. That's sort
Yeah.
of like his punishment for the things that he'd done wrong.
Interesting.
And that would have been like
Yeah.
sort of like, I that's where my head went with the Twilight Zone thing. But
No, that's cool. You guys, I don't know if you're familiar with the golem, but it's a Jewish
vaguely.
Jewish
It's a
lore.
Jewish folklore thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're
big stone guy.
stone or
Right.
clay, and
Or clay.
it's usually they put a scroll in its mouth or whatever, and as long as it's in there, like it will do your bidding, and it avenges people. You know what I mean? And I thought that's where I thought, like, how cool would it be, for that to be like the superhero to be based on, because she's Jewish, and so she's writing that
So
from
does-
her.
Does
from her
Abby
experience.
know? So then Abby's aware.
That's what.
Yeah.
No, that's where she came up with the idea for the story. She, does she
so
know
she's
if
not-
the golem
Does
is,
she
is
know
really
if it's
alive?
really?
I don't know. I mean, that's at the end. It's clear that she's something. I left it kind
That
of
she's
like,
aware that something.
Yeah,
I
something's
left
amiss.
it. Yeah, she. But she didn't want to say anything because she's like,
Sure, right.
She doesn't care what happened to him.
She doesn't want to cause any trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and that contest is called the Bulwer Lytton Fiction Contest.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I knew there was like a name because
I thought there-
I think the person who wrote that original line in a book,
Is
it's named after
is-
them. I think.
Oh,
Yes,
gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I knew it was
And that was
related to Dark and Stormy
fantastic.
Night.
The 2022 grand prize winner was so good.
Read it. What was it?
Read it. What was it?
Oh,
Sorry.
it says, it's okay. It says, I knew she was troubled the second she walked into my 24-hour deli, laundromat, and detective agency. And after dropping a load of unmentionables in one of the heavy-duty machines, a mistake that would soon turn deadly, she turned to me, asking for two things: find her missing husband and make her a salami on rye with spicy mustard, breaking into tears when I told her I couldn't help. I was fresh out of salami.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
genius. See, I think that's awesome. Like, I would
It
totally
was-
read that story.
I think we all need to do this.
wow. Like it was
Can
really
we please?
good.
That was,
It
I
was
feel like I
really
would
good,
excel at
but
that.
then the I was fresh out of salami just hit it out of the park.
Yeah, it's great.
Awesome.
I feel like
Yeah.
intentionally writing something bad, I excel at. I can do that.
That's amazing. Yeah, some of these are great. Like, what do we got here? The 2020 grand prize winner. Her dear John missive flapped unambiguously in the windy breeze, hanging like a pizza menu on the doorknob of my mind.
The doorknob of my
That's
mind.
fantastic. All right, that I wouldn't
Wow.
read that one, but I would definitely read the story. Like if it was all written like that, the one that Aaliyah just read, Like,
Oh
in
yeah, the detective
tongue in
agency
cheek,
thing.
like that's what
yeah,
they're doing.
totally.
I would totally read that
Absolutely.
guy's story like that. That would be into that. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, we're a little bit over time here. We knew that was going to happen. This is a long
Yeah,
episode.
sure.
But I want to thank Matt and Ian for being here today. Their show where we guest drops tomorrow. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah,
Correct.
tomorrow.
Which is Monday, the
6th.
Oh my
for those of
gosh.
you who are watching right now or listening, you can just go to Promptly Written on your favorite podcast player.
Podcast
Anywhere
player.
podcasts are available. I guess.
Yeah. Do you guys have a prompt for next month yet? Do we know? Or is
it was you actually. and I
Yeah,
believe
it's
it was,
it's yours, Jeff. Something about
something
finicky.
about finicky.
He looks
Hold
finicky
on,
or something like that.
Oh, he looks
He
finicky.
seems finicky.
Okay.
Maybe.
He seems finicky.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was something like that. Yeah. All right, cool. So we'll look forward to your next episode. And do you have any? Where can people find you? Besides, we told them where the podcast is, but is there anything else you want to share as far as?
Ian.
IanLewisFiction.com is my very simple website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm at mattchigaric.com. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, all of them. So wherever.
Wow, really creative, guys. Really
Yeah,
creative.
we above and beyond is what we aspire to.
They put all the creativity in their stories. They're like the web page. I mean, come on. Let's just.
What was their names, Utah? In your story, what was their
Sat
names?
Sat McGarrick and Liam Uwis.
Liam
There you go.
Uwis.
Uwis.
That Liam Uwis needs a pen name, I think.
That's funny.
I think so.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So what we announced on your podcast, Matt, and I think you said you're going to put the trailer on there.
Yeah, I did. I tagged it on the end.
A new podcast that Matt and I
Nice.
have teamed up on. Speaking of Stephen King, we were talking about earlier. Both of us are King fans, and we are going to journey through the Dark Tower series and all of the ancillary books that extend throughout his crazy Stephen King
All of the
extended
side
universe.
quests.
Yeah,
So
we're going to
many
take a lot of
books.
side quests. It's a lot of fun. If you're interested, if you love Stephen King, you can join us for that. I am not going to play the trailer because it's already been long enough of a show, but I will put a link to the show in the show notes so you can check that out. We got a trailer out there. We're going to be recording soon. We're going to start reading with the Gunslinger, and it's a 5-year journey, I think, through
Something
everything
like that. It's
Yeah.
a long
5-year mission.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just 2 years through the main Dark Tower, or 3 years to the main Dark Tower stuff.
It's all
And
the
then
side
that's
quests.
all
that
that.
you
Yeah,
guys
it's all
are
the
gonna
side
do.
quests, and then there's a lot of extra stuff.
Are you going
we're
to include the
throw
movie
in.
too?
Because
Yeah,
what
at
do we
the end?
like the reading for the listeners for episode? It's going to be what, like about 150 page chunks or something.
Yeah, I think it's never more than like 200. So literally you could read more than that, obviously, but we're going to take it in those kind of chunks to kind of talk about it and that kind of stuff. And it's divided up as the chapters and parts are, kind of, to make sure that they all stay. It doesn't stop in the middle of a page or in the middle of a chapter.
Right.
That'd be
Yeah.
funny.
Until
And
next
he
time. Yeah, you'll find out. All right. Well, thanks again for listening, and we appreciate you. Make sure to follow us on all the socials at World Gone Geek. Subscribe on YouTube. Smash that like button. I've never said that as a YouTuber, but there we go. And Twitch, and we're also on Twitter and Instagram, and all those fun things. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys. No show next week because I won't be here, but we will make sure to watch the Oscars because we're going to talk about it the week after.